Chapter 1. Madman Li Yuan, who pursued immortality all his life, tried to combine ancient Chinese martial arts, cultivation, and science, but to no avail. Coincidentally, during a deep-sea exploration, Li Yuan discovered a lifelike naked female corpse in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, which immediately shook the world. The human body, without any protection, could only dive to a maximum depth of 237 meters. But this female corpse, without any protection, was perfectly preserved after 10,000 years in the deep sea, which was more than 8,000 meters deep. It was hard to imagine what kind of level the body had reached. Li Yuan felt as if he had found a treasure. For the next few years, Madman Li Yuan devoted himself to the research of this female corpse. 6 years later, he finally succeeded in extracting the genes of the female corpse, combining them with his own genes to successfully breed a baby boy, and successfully embedded a microbe chip containing Li Yuan's lifelong memories into the baby boy's brain. 12 years later, if the baby boy's brain could be completely integrated with the microbe chip, it would signify the arrival of the era of immortality, and this infant would become the second Li Yuan. However, at the moment when the microbe chip was successfully implanted into the infant's brain, something unexpected happened. From the mysterious female's body, a bright light suddenly emitted and directly entered the infant's body. Immediately after, the female's body experienced a terrifying explosion, which actually tore apart the void, creating a huge black hole. Li Yuan's laboratory, which was known to have the strongest defense in the world, directly turned into ruins and turned into nothingness. No one knew that this infant boy, who had spent all of Li Yuan's efforts and gathered all of Li Yuan's memories with the strongest genes, had transmigrated to a magical world and started a brand new life. The boundless land was vast and boundless. This was a world where martial artists ran amok, filled with countless empires and powerful forces, as well as some mysterious domains. The flames of war were incessant all year round, causing the status of martial artists to become more and more revered. Hey! Loud shouts, accompanied by gusts of fist wind, resounded in the huge training field. Several square formations, with dozens of young boys and girls in each formation, were tossing and turning, and the wind from their fists was fierce. Every one of them was full of vigor, and their movements were neat and uniform. When they punched, it was like a dragon emerging from the sea, or an arrow leaving the bow. It actually caused the air to vibrate, showing a solid foundation of martial arts. This was the Shao clan's martial arts practice field. In the center of the martial arts practice field, there was an open-air platform that was 2 to 6 meters tall. On both sides of the platform, there were 2 flagpoles. On the flagpoles, there were 2 large black flags with golden edges that fluttered in the wind. On each flag was embroidered a large golden character, Shao. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood on the high platform. He stood with his hands behind his back and wore a purple robe. He was tall and had a powerful physique. His eyes emitted a threatening light as he looked down at the crowd below. Just by standing there, he gave off a heavy feeling like a mountain, exuding a powerful pressure. Report! At this moment, a loud shout was heard. A figure rushed to the front of the high platform like a galloping horse. He bowed and said loudly, "Head instructor, we have absorbed a total of 354 children with good aptitude from the villages and towns within a radius of 50 kilometers. They have all been brought here. Bring him in." This middle-aged man was the head instructor of the Shao family's outer court disciples, Shaoguan. A moment later, a group of children between the ages of 10 and 13 walked in under the lead of several Shao clan disciples. Behind them, there were some well-dressed adults. These people were basically the parents of these children. This was a grand event that the Shao family held every 3 years in order to strengthen the family's strength. At the same time, this was also a grand event within a radius of 50 kilometers. No matter if it was a poor family or a rich family, they all hoped that their children could become a disciple of the Shao family. Because once they became a disciple of the Shao family, it meant that they would be able to become outstanding. Especially for poor families, it was even more so. But every time the Shao family recruited disciples, there were almost none from poor families. This was not because the recruiters accepted bribes or committed irregularities. After all, there was still the fairest test. Actually, the reason was very simple. Aptitude. The so-called aptitude was nothing more than the brain and physical condition. Because of this, it was very difficult for poor children to be selected by the Xiao family. Think about it, a child who did not even have enough to eat since young, how could his physical condition be good? There was no doubt about this. The young boys and girls who had been cultivating automatically formed two huge rectangular lines on both sides. Their faces were brimming with confidence and pride as they looked at the children who slowly walked in and commented while pointing and commenting. All the children, under the command of the Xiao family disciples, stood in a huge square formation. At this time, a boy standing in the last row attracted a lot of attention. He was a little different from the other children. Most of the other children were wearing expensive brand new clothes, silk brocades, and everything else. With one look, one could tell that they were children of rich families. But this boy was wearing a set of coarse hemp clothes. Only poor families and the lowest class people would wear coarse hemp clothes. For a poor child to be able to pass the Xiao family's selection and obtain the qualifications to take the test, it was very eye-catching in itself. One had to know that in the last 10 years or so, the Xiao family had recruited disciples 4 times, and not a single poor child had appeared. But this was not the most eye-catching thing about this boy. The most eye-catching thing was that under the gaze of Xiao Guan and the other Xiao family disciples, that natural huge pressure made all the children tremble in fear, not daring to raise their heads. But this boy was standing straight, his eyes full of determination, burning with excitement. Although his body was small and thin, his complexion was rosy. His young and delicate face was filled with spirituality. His entire person was like a piece of unpolished jade that had not been carved. The coarse linen clothes that had turned white from washing simply could not conceal his spirituality. Such a child, if he took off that coarse hemp clothes and put on a luxurious jade outfit, no one would doubt him if he was said to be a noble. Even Xiao Guan was slightly stunned the moment he saw this child. He could not help but praise him in his heart. After slowly sweeping his gaze over the 354 children, the cold-faced iron hand Xiao Guan coughed lightly. The noisy martial arts stage suddenly became silent. First of all, congratulations on obtaining the Xiao family's test qualifications. This proves that your physical condition has met the basic requirements to become a martial artist. But this does not mean that you can become a Xiao family disciple. If you want to become a Xiao family disciple, if you want to become a true martial artist, just your physical condition is far from enough. Xiao Guan's voice was not loud, but it clearly passed into the ears of everyone present. Confidence, courage, wisdom, perception, unswerving perseverance, these are the key to becoming a martial artist. If you want to become a Xiao family disciple, you must put forth enough effort and ruthlessness. Xiao Guan's gaze turned to the children's parents. I believe that you all know what the Xiao family's test means. I hope that your children can pass the test, but that is unrealistic. At least 10% of them will die in the test, 60% will be eliminated, and only 30% will become a Xiao family disciple. So, it is not too late for you to regret now. I allow you to withdraw your children. Xiao Guan's gaze once again turned to the children, pausing for a moment before continuing. Of course, if you are afraid, you can withdraw on your own. Does anyone want to withdraw? Xiao Guan asked in a deep voice. Whether it was the children or the parents, no one made a sound. Who would withdraw from an opportunity that had not been easy to obtain? Who would miss this opportunity to become a carp that had not been easy to obtain? Not to mention, everyone present already knew the cruelty of the Xiao family's test before signing up. If they were afraid, why would they sign up? However, at this moment, to everyone's surprise, a middle-aged woman rushed out from the crowd, shouting, "We withdraw, we withdraw." Everyone's gaze was focused on the middle-aged woman. The middle-aged woman, who was about 30 years old, rushed to the boy in coarse linen clothes with a haggard face and tears on her face. "Tianxi, why did you sign up without telling me? If Butt-Face had not told me, Tianxi, let's withdraw. You are still young, and you can't compete with them." You don't want you to die. The middle-aged woman held the boy's hand and said in a sobbing tone, her weather-beaten face wet with tears. No, mother, I am almost 12 years old. I have grown up and I can compete with them. I will definitely become a Xiao family disciple and a martial artist. The boy said firmly in his tender voice. Tianzi, listen to me. I just want you to be safe and stay by my side forever. No. Mother, I want you to live a good life. I want to become a martial artist. The boy said firmly again. His handsome face was filled with incomparable determination. His voice, his gaze, and his simple and straightforward words all displayed his strong conviction to become a cultivator. To most people, a 12-year-old child was still in ignorant age. The ones who really guided their thoughts were their parents, and most of them followed their parents' intentions to determine their own direction. However, this boy actually made such a strong and determined voice, his own voice. Tianzi. The woman wanted to persuade a few more words, but looking at the boy, she could not say anything. She knew that her child had really grown up. She was reluctant to part with him, worried, but more than that, she was touched. She struggled to support a family of 5, taking care of her disabled husband and 3 children, who were the oldest 12 years old and the youngest 7 years old. She drifted from place to place and did not have a fixed place to stay. Life was hard, very hard, but she never gave up. That was because she wanted to bring up her 3 obedient and adorable children. They were her everything, her hope, and her only spiritual support. Mother, you don't have to worry. Go home and wait for my good news. After the boy finished speaking, he suddenly turned to the head instructor standing on the high platform and said loudly, I'm not quitting. I want to participate in the Xiao family's test. Good. Xiao Guan's cold eyes flashed with a trace of admiration. He said in a deep voice, since no one quits, then the test officially begins. After 8 hours, everyone will know the result. Everyone can wait here or at home. Let's go. Following Xiao Guan's command, the youths were divided into 10 groups. Under the guidance of the Xiao family disciples, they passed through the huge martial arts field and walked towards the Xiao family's back mountain. The Xiao family's back mountain was called Sky Road Mountain. The entire Xiao family's buildings were located at the foot of the mountain. Behind the mountain was an endless mountain range with cliffs on both sides. The only way to climb up the mountain was through the Xiao family. This natural barrier made the Sky Pillar Mountain into the Xiao family's private territory. Under the guidance of the Xiao family disciples, the youths passed through the martial arts field and entered the Xiao family's back mountain. The first thing they saw was a staircase that was directly carved out of the mountain. It was about 3 meters wide and a small section of about 100 meters had a protective fence installed. There was no protection further up and it looked abnormally steep. Looking up, one couldn't see the end of it, as if it was connected to the sky. In addition to this staircase, there were rugged rocks all around. Green pines, green cypresses, and exotic flowers grew sparsely in the cracks of the rocks. Everyone came to a man-made platform in front of the staircase that was several hundred meters square and stopped. Xiao Guan stood on the top of the staircase and looked down at the excited youths. He said in a deep voice, "Do you see the staircase behind me? Our Xiao family spent 10 years to build this staircase. It's also the only way to safely reach the peak. There are a total of 8,872 steps and it's about 3,000 meters high. Your first test is to reach the peak. The time limit is 2 hours. Those who give up halfway will be eliminated. Those who exceed the time limit will be eliminated. 3,000 meters, 2 hours? Although these children hadn't climbed such a high mountain before, in their opinion, this test wasn't as scary as the legend said. Do you understand? Xiao Guan shouted. Understood. The youths replied loudly with high confidence. Looking at these newborn calves, the Xiao family disciples leading the group smiled. Didn't they also think the same when they participated in this test? But if the Xiao family's test was so simple, they wouldn't be the Xiao family. Good, I'll wait for you at the peak. Start now. Xiao Guan's figure flashed and he went up the staircase at an astonishing speed. When the youths heard Xiao Guan's command, they all rushed up the staircase at the same time. In an instant, the originally narrow staircase became extremely crowded. What are you panicking for? Pay attention to your safety. If you fall down, you'll die. No one can save you. The Xiao family disciple leading the group hurriedly shouted. A moment later, more than 300 youths had all climbed up the staircase. Most of the youths quickly stabilized their speed and climbed up unhurriedly. Obviously, these youths had been taught by experienced people to maintain their physical strength and advance steadily in order to successfully complete the task. If they blindly rushed forward, they would quickly exhaust their physical strength and would not be able to pass the test. However, there was an exception. The youth in coarse hemp clothes. After he rushed up the staircase, his speed didn't decrease at all. He rushed up with all his might and reached the top in just a moment. Furthermore, he showed no signs of slowing down, pulling further and further away from the rest of the youths. Seeing the youth in the hemp clothes rushing past them, the youths didn't panic at all. Instead, a trace of mockery flashed in their eyes, as if they were looking at a fool. Even the Xiao family disciples in charge of monitoring and protection couldn't help but look at each other. Didn't anyone tell this little guy about the Xiao family's first test? This is a compulsory test. Senior brother Jihan, should we remind him? He looks quite pitiful, a Xiao family disciple named Xiao Jifeng said. The Xiao family disciples were divided into two types, outer and inner disciples. The 8 words, long live the fall and 10,000 generations, forever auspicious, were the words used by the outer court disciples of the Xiao clan. The word Ji was used for the 7th generation of the Xiao family's outer disciples. The word Xiang was used for the Xiao family disciples recruited this year. From the word generation, it could be seen that the Xiao family had been recruiting outer disciples once every 3 years for a total of 24 years. Anyone who became a Xiao family disciple would be given the surname Xiao. However, the word generation depended on the time of entry. As for inner disciples, they weren't restricted by the word generation. Other than being given the surname Xiao, they could have any name. Inner disciples could only be promoted to inner disciples after the outer disciples' strength reached the 9th grade martial master realm and become a true member of the Xiao family. Even the direct descendants of the Xiao family were no exception. In the Boundless Land, martial artists were divided into 9 levels: martial disciple, martial student, martial warrior, martial master, martial monarch, martial emperor, martial ancestor, martial sage, and martial god. Every level was divided into 9 grades, and the 9th grade was the peak of that level. Remind my ass. Such a lowly person wants to become a Xiao family disciple? Dream on. I think he won't even know how he died. Don't remind him. Let him charge. Let's see how long he can charge. Xiao Jihan said sternly. Xiao Jihan was obviously the leader of this group of people. When he said that, Xiao Jifeng didn't dare to say anything else. However, Xiao Jifeng didn't understand why Xiao Jihan seemed to hate that linen-clothed youth so much. Alright, let's follow. Jifeng, you stay at the back. Jiyuan, Jitao, Jibua, you guys follow in batches. I'll go in front. Xiao Jihan ordered and rushed up the stairs. Their mission was to monitor and protect these testing youths and try to minimize any accidents. Charge. Charge. I must pass the Xiao family's test. The linen-clothed youth only had one obsession in his heart, and that was to reach the peak in the shortest time possible. In order to not be bullied, in order to protect his family, in order to let his younger siblings eat their fill every day, in order to avenge his father, he had to become a Xiao family disciple. This was his only friend, but face, who didn't despise him for being poor and secretly gave him food. He told him that becoming a martial artist was his best and fastest way out. This youth's name was Tianxi, and he didn't have a surname. Ever since he was sensible, he had asked his parents why his younger brother was called Qin Nan and his younger sister was called Qin Yan, but he was only called Tianxi. His parents told him that it was because he was given to them by the heavens, and adding any surname to his name was disrespectful to the heavens. It wasn't until he was sensible that he understood that he wasn't his parents' biological son. His parents said that he had fallen from the sky. They described it in detail, saying that he was wrapped in a strange transparent thing filled with viscous liquid. When he fell from the sky, there was a pit that was several meters deep on the ground. That was how his parents got him. No matter how many times he asked, his parents would give him the same answer. However, he understood that he was picked up by his parents and that he was an abandoned baby. He was an abandoned baby abandoned by his biological parents. He knew that his parents were only trying to comfort his young heart. Under his strong request, his parents gave him the name Chen Hao. Hao originally meant the heavens. It was still telling him that he was given to him by the heavens. Although he had this name, his parents still called him Tianzi. However, his parents were closer to him than their biological children. Since he was young, his appetite was astonishing. His parents lived frugally and even reduced the food for his younger siblings so that he could eat more. He was always the first to wear new clothes, and his younger siblings would always wear what was left of him. Therefore, in his heart, his current parents were his real parents, and his current home was his home. Who were his biological parents? He had never thought that even if they really appeared one day, he wouldn't acknowledge them. However, he didn't know that in this world, it was impossible for his biological parents to exist. However, when he was 12 years old, he finally understood that his parents didn't lie to him, and he finally knew what kind of existence he was. Phew, phew. Chen Hao sprinted and ran crazily. He had never run so crazily before. With the support of his strong belief, he sprinted continuously for half an hour without slowing down. Not only that, but he was also increasing in speed. His breathing became deeper and deeper, and he felt as if there was a ball of fire burning in his chest. He could clearly hear the sound of his heart beating rapidly, but he didn't feel tired at all. On the contrary, he felt that his body was filled with energy, as if his blood was burning. Listening to the sound of the wind and seeing the scenery on both sides of him rapidly passing by, he experienced a refreshing feeling that he had never experienced before. How is this kid so fast? Xiao Jihan, who was in charge of monitoring the front, overtook all the youths in a short while. He thought that he would soon overtake the poor kid who didn't know how to conserve his energy, but he didn't expect that even though he used all his strength, the youth behind him was getting further and further away, but the figure of the poor kid in front was getting smaller and smaller. How was this possible? He couldn't catch up to a youth who had never cultivated before? He was a 7th grade martial warrior. However, that was the truth. As Xiao Jihan desperately chased after him and was extremely shocked, the youth in linen clothes gradually disappeared from his sight. At the peak of the Heavens Road, it was as if an immortal with boundless magical powers had used an unparalleled divine power to chop off the peak. It was actually a huge circular platform with a diameter of several hundred meters. The entire platform was like a huge martial arts arena. At the edge facing away from the Xiao family, there was a man-made pavilion that was 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, and 4 meters tall. The entire pavilion was made from red Shoshan stone. The 4 pillars and the top of the pavilion were made from precious red fir wood. The exquisite carvings were obviously the work of a great master. On the huge silver plaque with golden words written on it was written Heaven's Road Peak. The strokes were vigorous and imposing. At this moment, Xiao Guan, who had already reached the peak and was sitting cross-legged in the pavilion, along with the examiners who had been waiting for a long time, suddenly opened their eyes and looked in the direction of the stairs. Their expressions were filled with shock and disbelief. At this moment, less than an hour had passed since the start of the test. The height of 3,000 meters was far from what flat ground could compare to. The higher the height, the thinner the air. An ordinary person would find it hard to breathe just by standing at the peak. Even a 9th grade martial warrior would need an hour to reach the peak. However, at this moment he actually saw a skinny figure dressed in coarse linen clothes rushing to the peak. Inconceivable! I'm here, I'm the first one here. This thought flashed through Chen Hao's mind when he saw Xiao Guan and the examiners behind him. With a bang, he climbed to the top of the mountain, panting heavily. His clothes were already soaked in sweat, and he felt as if his chest was on fire. Only now did he truly feel uncomfortable. Cold iron hand Xiao Guan's figure flashed and appeared beside Chen Hao. His eyes carefully sized up Chen Hao before he suddenly bent down and stretched out his hand that was twice the size of an ordinary person's. Shining with a faint purple light, He grabbed Chen Hao's wrist. Frowning slightly, Chen Hao suddenly felt a warm current flowing into his body. It was soft and numb. After a full minute, Xiaoguan finally let go of his hand. There's no trace of elemental energy. He really isn't a martial artist. Xiaoguan was shocked. He can actually reach such a speed with just the strength of his body. What's your name? Xiaoguan asked in a deep voice. Chen Hao, sir? My name is Chen Hao. Chen Hao was panting like an ox as he looked up at the seemingly powerful Xiaoguan. He knew that this person's position in the Xiao family must be very high. For a moment, he didn't know how to address him, so he could only call him sir. Chen Hao, very good, very good. Congratulations on becoming a disciple of the Xiao family. Become a disciple of the Xiao family? Chen Hao was stunned and asked doubtfully, Sir, aren't there still a few more tests? As he spoke, Chen Hao slowly stood up. At this time, his breathing gradually stabilized, and the burning fire in his chest gradually extinguished. He felt much more comfortable. Seeing this scene, Xiaoguan's eyes flashed with shock again. From Chen Hao's breathing, Xiaoguan could tell that this youth had an amazing recovery ability. You were able to obtain first place in the first test and break the record so you can skip the other tests. Now, you are a disciple of the Xiao family. Xiaoguan said in a deep voice, not hiding the admiration in his eyes. Really? Chen Hao's eyes flashed with intense joy. He didn't dare to believe that he had become a disciple of the Xiao family so easily. Of course, take this and report to the Xiao family in 3 days. A black token appeared in Chen Hao's hand, with a golden Xiao character engraved on it. Chen Hao knew that he had really become a disciple of the Xiao clan when he saw this token that represented him as a disciple of the Xiao clan. At this moment, his heart was filled with excitement and joy. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was to tell this good news to his family as soon as possible. Sir, then can I go back and tell my mother now? Of course. Thank you. Chen Hao bowed and said, then without saying anything else, he turned and ran. Looking at the skinny figure that was quickly disappearing into the distance, cold-faced Iron Hand Xiaoguan and the other examiners of the Xiao family were shocked. Is this kid made of iron? Chapter 2. Just as Xiao Jihan was using all his strength to rush up the mountain peak, a dazzling light suddenly shot into his eyes. He saw the figure of a young man dressed in coarse hemp clothes rushing down the mountain peak under the bright morning sun. The dazzling light came from the young man's hand. Xiao Jihan's eyes widened as his heart filled with shock. When the excited young man quickly passed by him, he finally saw the item in the young man's hand. It was the Xiao family's token. The dazzling light was the reflection of the golden Xiao word on the token. Xiao Jihan knew what the token meant. He stopped in his tracks and turned to look at Chen Hao's back as a dark green ominous glint flashed across his eyes. Xiao Jihan, 16 years old, was the strongest among the 7th generation of Xiao family's outer sect disciples. He became a Xiao family disciple at the age of 12 and used only 4 years to reach the 7th grade martial warrior realm. He had the potential to become an inner sect disciple of the Xiao family before the age of 20. He was definitely a genius. No matter what, Chen Hao would never have thought that before he even entered the Xiao clan, he would already have an extremely powerful enemy. The reason was because of a girl that Chen Hao did not even know, Xiao Jian. Senior brother Jihan, I'm guessing that he will definitely become a Xiao family disciple. When Chen Hao's mother asked Chen Hao to withdraw from the test, a slender and elegant girl, who looked like an angel, stood beside Xiao Jihan and looked at Chen Hao and his mother. Confidence and courage. He has everything that Uncle Xiaoguan said. Xiao Jian said, furthermore, he looks different from others. He's really good looking. Hee. The little girl smiled like a flower as she looked at Chen Hao in the arena and said unintentionally. However, because of Xiao Jian's unintentional words, countless black lines appeared on Xiao Jihan's handsome face. As he stared at the little girl, who was still smiling at Chen Hao, he, who originally did not think much of Chen Hao, turned his head to carefully size him up. Just one look and he immediately felt a sense of danger. This little girl was the Xiao family's third young miss, Xiao Jin. She was 13 years old and had curved eyebrows like willow leaves and large, watery eyes. Although she was young, she was a beauty in the making. She was the most beloved daughter of the Xiao family's patriarch, Xiao Ding, and was about the same age as Chen Hao. The 16-year-old Xiao Jihan already had the ambition to capture her. Once he became the son-in-law of the Xiao clan, his status in the future would be unimaginable, and the Xiao clan's peerless martial arts would be at his fingertips. On the other hand, Xiao Jian had unintentionally revealed a favorable impression of Chen Hao. In addition, the two of them were about the same age. In particular, Xiao Jihan saw a similar ambition in Chen Hao's eyes. This made Xiao Jihan feel a sense of danger. However, at that time, Xiao Jihan did not really care. After all, although it was dangerous, it did not pose any threat to him. But now, Chen Hao's astonishing speed truly made Xiao Jihan feel threatened. Any threat must be nipped in the bud. Xiao Jihan looked at Chen Hao's back and said coldly. This sentence was instilled in him by his wealthy father since he was young, and he had always believed in it as the truth. After the 7th generation of disciples, the first person to advance to the inner court will definitely be me, Xiao Jihan. Xiao Jian will also belong to me, Xiao Jihan. No one else can have her. Looking at the astonished gazes of the youths, Chen Hao was exceptionally happy. He had already become a disciple of the Xiao family, and these youths were still working hard to pass the test. He never knew that he could run so fast. He only wanted to pass the test, but he never expected to be the first to reach the peak. When he saw the astonishment in everyone's eyes, he knew that he had done well. This sense of superiority made him feel his own worth for the first time. He was very happy that he could finally do something for his family. Thinking of his crippled father who was bedridden all year round, thinking of his haggard mother who worked day and night, thinking of his pitifully thin brother and sister who did not have enough to eat. Chen Hao's eyes unknowingly filled with tears as he sprinted. However, his gaze became even more determined as he ran even faster. He wanted to use the fastest speed possible to tell this good news to his family. Why is this kid back already? The parents who were waiting in the martial arts arena suddenly saw the poor kid dressed in coarse hemp clothes running out from the door leading to the back of the mountain. He must have been eliminated early. Look at him crying. What's the use of crying? How can a poor kid become a disciple of the Xiao family? You have to know that my child needs 2 taels of silver to eat every day. Without a good body, how can he pass the Xiao family's test? Isn't that so? My child doesn't even need 2 taels of silver. He needs to eat ginseng and bird's nest every day. Walking into the martial arts arena, Chen Hao saw his mother who was looking around. There were 3 more people beside his mother and all of them were looking at him anxiously. Seeing this scene, Chen Hao, who was already in tears, felt an indescribable emotion in his heart. He could not control his tears and they flowed down his face. He quickly ran towards them. Mother, butt-face, brother, sister. Chen Hao choked as he spoke. Brother. Boo. 2 pitifully thin boys and girls who were 6 or 7 years old threw themselves into Chen Hao's arms at the same time and hugged him tightly. It was as if they were afraid of losing their brother as they cried loudly. Tianzi, don't cry. It's okay that you didn't pass. It's good that you came back alive. Mother just wants you to be safe. The middle-aged woman's tense nerves finally relaxed at this moment. She hugged her children tightly and spoke in a low voice. Brother Tianzi, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have told you. I made Uncle and Auntie worry. A boy who was about the same age as Chen Hao and looked very simple and honest said in a low voice while scratching his head with a regretful look. Tears were swirling in his eyes. This boy was Chen Hao's only friend, butt-face. No, mother. At this moment, Chen Hao realized that everyone was completely wrong. Don't say any more. Mother knows. Let's go home. Don't make your father worry, hee. Just as Chen Hao was at a loss of what to do, a clear and melodious laughter that sounded like a silver bell rang in their ears. Chen Hao's family and butt-face immediately looked over. They saw an angelic girl appear in front of them. She had thin curved eyebrows, big eyes, and a rosy white face. She was smiling sweetly at them. "Why are you crying? This little brother has passed the test. You should be happy." The girl's bell-like voice rang out again. The test?" The girl's voice was clearly heard by everyone. Not only Chen Hao's mother, brother, sister, and buttface, but also the surrounding people all thought that they had heard wrongly. They all stared with their eyes wide open. The test was supposed to take 8 hours. He came back in 2 hours. How could he have passed the test? Is this true? Chen Hao's mother asked uncertainly. Chen Hao was about to speak when the girl took the lead again. "Of course it's true. Look at what's in his hand." The girl pointed at the token in Chen Hao's hand and said, This is the token of our Xiao family. Only the disciples who pass the test can get it. I told you you can do it." The girl patted Chen Hao's shoulder with a smile and said, "Little brother, you should be happy. Why are you crying? By the way, what's your name?" Glancing at the girl, Chen Hao hurriedly averted his gaze. His delicate and pretty face actually turned completely red as he stuttered. "I'm Chen Hao." "Chen Hao? Xiang Hao? It doesn't sound good. I'm sure you can get your real name back." The girl seemed to be talking to herself. Suddenly, she smiled and said to Chen Hao, "My name is Xiao Jian. I'll be your senior sister from now on. Remember to call me senior sister." I finally have a junior brother. Okay, I'm going to cultivate. If you have any difficulties in the future, remember to ask me for help. I'm very powerful. After saying that, the girl skipped away like a happy angel. "Xiao Jian," Chen Hao murmured as he secretly looked at the back of the girl who had disappeared into the distance. Chapter 3. Taiping Town was only about 5 kilometers away from the Xiao family. Because of the Xiao family, Taiping Town was much larger and more prosperous than other towns. During this period, the Xiao family's triennial enrollment had made Taiping Town even more lively. There was a lot of traffic and people coming and going. All the hotels, big and small, were full of people. Chen Hao's family of 5 lived in a very remote slum at the edge of Taiping Town. A mud house of less than 30 square meters was the residence of the family of 5. In this dark and damp house, where there was no sunlight all year round, a big brick Kong occupied half of the room. This was where the family of 5 slept. At this time, a thin middle-aged man was lying on the bed. This man was Chen Hao's disabled father, Chen Hai. He has embarked on this path after all? Never mind. He can't be a cripple like me. Maybe one day. Chen Hai shook his head and said in a desolate voice, I think too much. At this time, it was past noon. He was thinking that if his wife could stop Tianxi in time, they should be home now. However, they were still not back. His wife didn't know, but Chen Hai knew that if they hadn't come back at this time, Chen Hao must have taken the test. Since he had taken the test, Chen Hao would definitely pass. He had watched Chen Hao grow up. How could he not know about Chen Hao's talent? Just at this time, footsteps came from outside the door. Chen Hai's expression changed. The sadness on his face disappeared in an instant and was replaced by a touch of joy. He shouted as if he couldn't wait, Mei, is that you?" "It's me." It was not his wife, Mei, who answered Chen Hai, but another woman's voice. After a moment, a woman with an angry face walked in. This woman was wearing a bright red brocade dress. She was slightly fat and had a little makeup on her face. She looked very rich. The woman glanced around the room and fixed her eyes on Chen Hai. She said angrily, "Chen Hai, have you seen my butt face?" Chen Hai was a bit surprised. He hesitated and said, "Mrs. Dong Buttface and he went to the Xiao family." "The Xiao family? What are they doing there?" "Sister Dong, here's the thing. Tianxi went to the Xiao family's test without telling us. This morning, if Buttface hadn't come over, we wouldn't have known. He and Mei went to chase after Tianxi." Chen Hai said, "Participate in the Xiao family's test?" Buttface's mother was shocked. "With your Tianxi?" He was really overestimating himself. Could he pass the test? Don't you know how dangerous that test is? Nonsense, what nonsense? I won't even allow Buttface to participate in this competition. Your Tianxi? Forget it, Your life and death have nothing to do with me. Chen Hai, let me tell you something. Don't let your Tianxi hang out with Buttface in the future. Buttface will inherit his father's business in the future. If he hangs out with your Tianxi every day, what kind of future will he have? Also, your wife came back and told her that you've owed her half a year's worth of rent. Yes, I know. Sister Dong. In the face of such harsh words from Buttface's mother, Chen Hai didn't show any dissatisfaction on his face. Instead, he said nervously. He knew in his heart that although Buttface's mother was snobbish, sarcastic, and mean, she wasn't a bad person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let them owe their rent for several months. Also, for the past few years, other people's rent had been increasing again and again, but their rent hadn't increased at all. Moreover, what she said was also true. Buttface was going to inherit his father's business in the future. Therefore, he had to build a good relationship with the children of those who came and went, so that they could work well together in the future. But Buttface just liked to hang out with Tianxi all day long. At this moment, Chen Hao's excited voice suddenly came from outside the door. Dad, we're back. Brother Tianxi. Buttface's voice, which was even more excited than Chen Hao's, could be heard. However, before he could finish speaking, he stopped abruptly. He looked at the woman in the room and said in a low voice, Mother. Chen Hao was also a bit surprised. Auntie. Buttface's mother glanced at Chen Hao and seemed to be relieved. Then she stared at Buttface and grabbed his ear. You son of a bitch, how many times have I told you not to hang out with Tianxi? Is your brain made of tofu? Do you have any memory? Buttface screamed, but his mouth said stubbornly, Mom, Chang Zhong and the others all bully me. Don't hit me. I don't like to play with them. I like to play with Brother Tianxi. Play. You only know how to play. I'll see how you can inherit your father's business in the future. In the future, you'll be as poor as them. You won't even have enough to eat. You'll starve to death. No way. Buttface didn't know where his courage came from, but he said loudly, Brother Tianxi has already become a disciple of the Xiao family. What did you say? Buttface's mother's hand stopped in midair and she asked in shock. Chen Hai, who was lying on the bed, also raised his head in shock. He knew that as long as Chen Hao participated in the test, he would definitely pass. But now he came back. Although it was a bit late, the test was definitely not over. So, Chen Hao should not have participated in the test. How could he have passed? Brother Tianxi has already become a disciple of the Xiao family. Mom, in 3 years I will also participate in the test of the Xiao family. I want to be with Brother Tianxi. I want to learn from Brother Tianxi. Mom, I don't like doing business. Buttface, who had never dared to speak loudly to his mother, was about to be separated from his only friend, Chen Hao, who had become a disciple of the Xiao family. This completely aroused the words hidden in his heart. Buttface spoke out his innermost thoughts. But he knew that he would face a storm from his mother. While his mother was in a daze, he hurriedly shrank to the door. If the situation was bad, he would immediately run away. As long as he ran to his father's side, he could save him from the abyss of suffering. At this time, Chen Hao's mother, brother, and sister had just returned home. They didn't know what had happened, so they stood quietly beside Buttface. To Buttface's surprise, his mother didn't chase after him and fly into a rage. Instead, she stared at Chen Hao and said, What? Buttface said, Is it true? Yes, Auntie. Chen Hao looked at Buttface, then looked up at Buttface's mother and said in a low voice. Hearing Chen Hao's affirmative answer, Buttface's mother's angry face suddenly changed. She looked at Chen Hao with a smile and said, Good, very good. I knew Tianxi would definitely have a bright future. Buttface, you don't have to sneak out to take food out in the future. Just take as much as you want. By the way, Ame, this house is too old, dark and small. It's time to tear it down and rebuild it. Today, all of you will move to our house. Buttface, later, bring your brother Tianxi and his family to our house. Mother will personally cook delicious food for all of you. Tianxi has become a disciple of the Xiao family. This is such a joyous event, we must celebrate it. I'll go back and cook now. Buttface's mother finished speaking with a face full of smiles. Then she turned around and trotted away, leaving the crowd looking at each other in confusion. They had seen snobbish people before, but they had never seen such a snobbish person. However, neither Chen Hao's parents nor Chen Hao had a trace of disgust, because they knew that this seemingly snobbish woman had not only done the icing on the cake. In the past few years, she had also helped them in their hour of need. It was just that her method was a bit different. She was not the bodhisattva of mercy, nor was she a saint, nor was she a fool. On the contrary, she was very shrewd. Therefore, it was impossible for her to give Chen Hao's family a lot of money and things so that they could live a rich life just because they were poor and in difficulties. However, she had managed to not raise the rent for several years. She had even been in arrears, even though the house was old, and trendy. She had managed to turn a blind eye to butt-face theft of rice, noodles, meat, and even oil, salt, and vinegar from her house. Without these things, how could Chen Hao's family survive until today? Butt-face's original name was Dong Liang. He had an elder sister named Dong Yu. Butt-face was weak and sickly when he was young. His parents were afraid that he would die young, so they gave him the nickname Butt-face. His father was called Dong Wuxiao. He ran a large-scale grocery store in the center of Taiping town. His mother, He Ting, was in charge of more than 30 properties in the slums. Although they were not very rich, they were quite famous in Taiping town. They belonged to an upper-middle-class family. Butt-face and his family lived in a relatively large single-family house on the edge of the slums. There was a main house and 2 side houses. The courtyard was decorated like a small garden. Although it wasn't as picturesque as a small bridge with flowing water, the style was still quite elegant. Compared to the slums where Chen Hao lived, the difference was like heaven and earth. Today, Butt-face was very happy. He held Chen Nan's hand with one hand and Chen Yan's hand with the other. They were talking and laughing excitedly. Meanwhile, Chen Hao and his mother supported their disabled father and followed behind them. They did not refuse He Ting's invitation. If Chen Hao had not become a disciple of the Xiao family, they would definitely not have accepted He Ting's invitation, because they could not repay He Ting's kindness and could not lose face. People could be poor, but they could not be so poor that they did not have a backbone. Now, because of the change of Chen Hao's identity, he accepted He Ting's invitation. This meant that he would become the backer of Butt-face's family in the future. 3 days later, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Chen Hao refused Butt-face's mother's request to buy him a new set of clothes. It would be a waste to buy new clothes for him. When he entered the Xiao family, he would have the special clothes of the Xiao family. At the same time, he refused to be sent off by others. Alone, wearing the coarse linen clothes, empty-handed and carrying his head on his shoulder, he stepped on the road to register at the Xiao family. My new book urgently needs the support of brothers and sisters. Please collect it and recommend it. Thanks from Wuxian. Chapter 4. Chen Hao. At the Xiao clan's newspaper office, a seemingly amiable old man suddenly asked with a cold expression when he saw a young man in coarse hemp clothes appear in front of him. Chen Hao was slightly stunned. Did he offend this old man in any way? He hurriedly and carefully said, "Yes, uncle." "Have you ever been to school?" the old man asked suddenly. No. Hearing the old man's question, Chen Hao's small face suddenly turned red and said nervously, "School was a right that only rich people's children had. For Chen Hao, it could only be an extravagant hope. Take it, this is yours, this is also yours." The old man looked at Chen Hao with disdain and directly threw a package to Chen Hao. Then he threw out a thick book and said, "Jiwan, take him to the dormitory." Chen Hao recognized that book. When Butt-face first entered school, he used the same book. Chen Hao took the package and picked up the book. He still stood in the same place and looked at the old man in front of him nervously. "Why you still in a daze? Don't disturb the other disciples' registration." The old man said impatiently, "Uncle, don't you also have a sword and a key?" Chen Hao didn't arrive early and was in the middle of the line. When the other disciples were registering, he also saw that the items they received were a package, a sword, and a key to the dormitory. However, the old man gave him an extra book, but seemed to have forgotten the sword and the key. This made Chen Hao slightly puzzled. Sword? You are not qualified. As a disciple of the Xiao family, you must have both civil and military skills. You haven't even been to school, how can you comprehend the mnemonic formula? The old man looked at Chen Hao with disdain as he spoke. Then, he waved his hand and began to process the next report. Thank you. The naive Chen Hao did not doubt him in the slightest. Instead, he felt that what the old man said was very reasonable. After bowing and expressing his thanks, he followed the Xiao clan disciple who did not seem to have a good expression inside. After walking for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, under the guidance of the Xiao clan disciple, Chen Hao arrived in front of a large courtyard with the word Xiang written in front of the door. Inside the large courtyard were numerous exquisite huts. Each hut was independent, different in size, and different in number. The huts were surrounded by a bamboo fence with a small door. There were close to 100 such huts in the courtyard. Chen Hao looked at them one by one and found a pattern. The bigger the number, the smaller the house. However, even the smallest house was much bigger than the slum where Chen Hao and his family lived. Is this my dormitory? It's so big. Chen Hao was secretly surprised. He originally thought that the newly recruited disciples of the Xiao family would live in a room with several people. He did not expect that it was actually a single house. Moreover, it was very exquisite and looked very comfortable. However, the Xiao clan disciple who was leading the way did not seem to have any intention of stopping. He continued to lead Chen Hao into the depths of the large courtyard without stopping. Chen Hao did not understand, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. He just foolishly followed along. After a few more turns, a row of huts appeared in front of Chen Hao's eyes. Compared to the huts he saw previously, these huts were clearly much smaller. Moreover, they looked very dilapidated and bare. There was no bamboo fence. The hut at the side was even more exaggerated. There were holes in the wall and the roof seemed to be extremely tattered. Just as Chen Hao was feeling puzzled, the Xiao clan disciple had already led him to the front of the row of huts. He suddenly turned around and said to Chen Hao, "Kid, the most dilapidated hut at the side is your dormitory." Chen Hao was stunned, but he was a simple person. Although he didn't understand and was puzzled, he still didn't say anything. He bowed to that Xiao clan disciple and said, "Thank you." That Xiao clan disciple coldly snorted, turned around, and left. Pauper. You will suffer in the future for offending senior brother Jihan. Going from first to last is just the beginning. After the Xiao clan disciple turned around and left, he spoke very softly, as if he was talking to himself. It clearly floated into Chen Hao's ears. At that moment, Chen Hao's delicate face was first stunned, puzzled, and confused. Then, it revealed an intense anger. The disciple did not expect Chen Hao to hear him because his voice was indeed very soft. However, he did not know that Chen Hao had been different from ordinary people since he was young. His hearing was several times better than an ordinary person's, and his vision was even more astonishing. He could clearly see a mosquito's leg from 10 meters away in the dark. Xiao Jihan? Who is he? Chen Hao suppressed the anger in his heart and walked towards the dilapidated hut. It was no wonder he did not have a key. The door of such a hut was already dilapidated, so how could he have a key? However, he did not know why he had offended Xiao Jihan the moment he entered the Xiao clan. He did not know this person at all. Just as Chen Hao was about to enter the hut, a girl about the same age as Chen Hao walked out of the hut next door. She seemed to know Chen Hao and was rather surprised. I know you. Strange. Why are you staying here? This should be the place where the last place is staying. You seem to be the first to pass the Xiao clan's test, right? The girl looked very smart. Her eyes were large and filled with confusion. She did not seem to understand why Chen Hao was arranged to stay here. Last place? Yes, don't you know? The people who live here are the last few places in the test. The better the result, the better the house. Did you see those numbers when you came in? They are all arranged according to the result of the test. I barely passed the test. I thought I was the last place. I never expected, but that shouldn't be the case. You should be the first, right? Strange, very strange. Oh, my name is Li Xiaoling. Oh no, I should be called Xianxia now. What's your name? The girl spoke a lot. The girl knew Chen Hao, but she only knew that he wore coarse linen clothes. As for his name, she did not know. Through the girl's words, Chen Hao understood one thing. The better the result, the better the house. Since he was arranged to stay here, it meant that he was the last in the test. However, he was clearly the first to pass the test, so why was he the last? A name flashed across Chen Hao's mind. Xiao Jihan. However, Chen Hao was confused by the girl's words. He vaguely guessed that after entering the Xiao clan, he would have to change his name. My name is Chen Hao. Chen Hao? Xiao Xianghao. It doesn't sound as good as Chen Hao. Do we have to change our names? I don't know much about the Xiao clan's rules, Chen Hao said. There's nothing I don't know about the Xiao clan's rules. Let me tell you. The girl's face was filled with a smug smile. She looked very cute and said, after becoming a disciple of the Xiao clan, you will be given the surname Xiao. The Xiao clan's disciples are also divided into inner and outer sect disciples. For us, we are outer sect disciples. This started 24 years ago. Other than changing their surname to Xiao, the outer court disciples also have a name generation. Throughout the ages, eternal prosperity is the name generation of the outer court disciples from the first generation to the 8th generation disciples. We are the 8th generation disciples, so our name, Xiao Xiang, is fixed. My original name was Li Xiaoling, so I am called Xiao Xiangling. If you don't like it, there's nothing you can do about it. This is the Xiao clan's rule, unless... Chen Xiangling said with a smile. Unless what? Unless you become a guest elder of the Xiao clan, then you can regain your original name. When the girl said the word, guest elder, her eyes were filled with longing and respect. Guest elder? What's that? Chen Hao asked in confusion. Xiao Xiangling was speechless. It seemed that this guy really did not know anything about the Xiao clan. Fortunately, one of her favorite things was to answer other people's questions. She patiently explained, the Xiao clan's guest elder is an existence second only to the Xiao clan's patriarch. Only a peak expert who has reached rank 9 martial monarch can become a Xiao clan's guest elder. At that time, you won't be restricted by the Xiao clan and can regain your original name. However, that's too difficult. I only need to become an inner sect disciple. Inner sect disciples can't change their surname, but they can change their name as they wish. There's no need to follow the name generation of the outer sect. Do you understand? I understand. Xiao clan's guest elder? No matter how difficult it is, I, Chen Hao, will become a Xiao clan's guest elder and regain my original name. Do you have any other questions? I, Liling, know everything Xiao Xiangling was very pleased with herself. She liked this feeling very much. Seeing Liling's seemingly all-knowing face, Chen Hao asked the question in his heart, do you know Xiao Jihan? Xiao Jihan? Liling was slightly surprised. A trace of envy flashed in her eyes as she said, of course I know him. He's the #1 expert of the Xiao clan's 7th generation outer sect disciples. After the 7th generation, he's the most promising genius to become an inner sect disciple. However, I only know of him and have never seen him in person. Do you know him? I don't know him. Looking at the envious expression on Liling's face, Chen Hao's suppressed anger suddenly rose again. He clenched his fist tightly and said coldly. After saying that, he ignored Liling's surprise and walked directly to the dilapidated house. Pushing open the broken door that could be kicked open with a single kick, Chen Hao walked into his own dormitory. Fortunately, the room was relatively clean. Although there were many holes in the walls and a few small skylights on the roof, compared to the slums he used to live in, the ventilation and lighting were much better. It was simply 4 sides ventilated, 5 sides lit, and it wasn't as humid as before. There was a simple wooden bed with a folded bedding. In the corner of the room, there were some simple daily necessities, but there was nothing else. Simply laying out the bedding, Chen Hao filled the water tank with a few buckets of water from the spring pool 100 meters away from the dormitory. Taking off his only set of coarse linen clothes, he neatly folded them and placed them at the corner of the bed. Wiping his body, He changed into a set of clothes provided by the Xiao clan. From the inside to the outside, it was milky white and the texture was soft. Wearing it felt very comfortable. On the left chest, there was a black Xiao word embroidered, and under the word was a number, 99. He was the last, which meant that there were a total of 99 Xiao clan disciples recruited this year. Clothes make the man, just like a horse makes the saddle. Chen Hao immediately looked a lot more spirited after changing into this set of clothes. He no longer looked like a poor boy. He, who was originally delicate and full of spirituality, looked even more handsome. One after another, all the Xiao clan disciples who came to report finally arrived in the evening. The new members who were arranged to stay in the rundown house near Chen Hao also arrived one after another. However, what Chen Hao did not expect was that in the 10 rundown houses, other than himself, there were only girls. He was the only man here, and he was the last. Why was he the first to pass the test but the last? During the Xiao clan's preliminary selection, there was no mention of whether he had attended school or not. Why was it that when he became a Xiao clan disciple, it was mentioned? Xiao Jihan. Everything was because of that inexplicable Xiao Jihan. All new members, listen up. In 15 minutes, gather at the Xiao clan's martial arts practice field. No one is allowed to be late. All new members, listen up. In 15 minutes, gather at the Xiao clan's martial arts practice field. No one is allowed to be late. Just as Lil Ling Er and the other 8 girls were chattering nonstop, Chen Hao was alone in the house reading a book that he could not recognize other than the numbers. Suddenly, a dignified voice entered everyone's ears. The voice was not loud, but it sounded as if it was right next to them. Chen Hao hurried out of the house and followed Lil Ling Er and the others. Chen Hao, what happened to you just now? Lil Ling Er couldn't help but ask after seeing Chen Hao. Nothing. I'm sorry. Let's go. Chen Hao changed the topic. Martial arts practice field on the high platform. Dressed in black, Xiao Guan was still standing with his hands behind his back. His sharp eyes looked at the new members that were arriving one after another. He was quite satisfied because the overall standard of this year's batch of disciples was higher than any previous batch. Moreover, there were a few outstanding youths, especially the one in the coarse linen robe called Chen Hao. His gaze swept through the crowd as if looking for someone, but no one appeared. When he saw number 1 appear, he frowned slightly. What's going on? Number 1 should be the boy in the coarse linen robe. Could it be he didn't come to report? A trace of doubt arose in Xiao Guan's heart as he turned to look at the old man sitting behind him. This old man was the one in charge of receiving the new disciples, the 6th elder of the Xiao clan, Xiao Bo. His position was second only to the Xiao clan's guest elder, but his position was more important than the Xiao clan's guest elder. This was because being a guest elder meant freedom. For the Xiao clan, being a guest elder was only a formality and a moral constraint. If they were happy, they could do it. If they were unhappy, they could just leave. Whereas the elders were true members of the Xiao clan. Who was more important and who was less important, it was obvious at first glance. Even Xiao Guan, the head instructor of the Xiao clan's outer disciples, was 1 rank lower than him. Xiao Guan turned around and asked, 6th elder, what's wrong with first place? First update, 4,000 words long chapter. I hope that my friends will come and support Dark Mountain. I don't need a single cent, it's completely free. But your favorites, recommendations, and clicks will determine how far our proud heaven can go. It's very important to Dark Mountain, so please, once you're done reading it, remember to add it to your favorites and recommend it. Chapter 5. What's wrong? Are you talking about that Chen Hao? Xiao Bo asked coldly. Yes, that youth is extremely talented. He broke the record of the first test with just his physical strength and was the first to pass the Xiao clan's test. Moreover, he has an obsession that ordinary children don't have. First place belongs to none other than him. None other than him? He didn't even go to school and doesn't know a single word. How can he be first? Humph, the fact that I didn't remove him from the list is already out of consideration for his talent. I've decided on last place. I'll give him 3 months. If he can recognize all the words in the boundless sea of learning, he'll be allowed to study the Xiao clan's martial arts. Otherwise, he'll be eliminated. Sixth Elder Xiaobo said coldly. Sixth Elder. Hearing Xiaobo's words, cold-faced iron-hand Xiaoguan was confused. In the past, the Xiao clan only looked at the test results when recruiting disciples. When was there ever a requirement on whether a disciple has attended school or not? If he can't even read, how can he have any comprehension ability? Cultivation methods and heart sutras, especially high-level ones, are all difficult to understand and rely on comprehension ability. How can an illiterate person comprehend them? Even if his talent is amazing, how high can he achieve? Xiaobo retorted sharply. I've already made up my mind. Xiaoguan, say no more. Xiaoguan was furious, but he couldn't find any reason to retort. Indeed, the more profound a martial art was, the more difficult it was to cultivate the Heart Sutra. How much one could comprehend depended entirely on one's comprehension ability. But while studying literature could increase one's comprehension ability, it only had a small effect. It didn't have much to do with one's comprehension ability. Otherwise, what was the point of having a master? A master's job was to teach and dispel doubts, passing on their own cultivation insights to their disciples. Furthermore, if studying literature was really so important, then wouldn't the current generation's great scholars all become peerless experts, or even those legendary experts? But since Xiaobo had put it this way, Xiaoguan could only let it go. It was just that Xiaobo's conditions were too harsh. One had to know that the boundless sea of learning didn't just contain the 3,400 commonly used words, it also contained more than 60,000 different types of characters. There were ancient oracle bone script, large seal script, small seal script, and even immortal script. It was incredibly complex. It was easier said than done to recognize all of them in 3 months. Of course, Xiaoguan knew that the sixth elder was talking about the 3,400 commonly used words. Even so, 3 months wasn't very likely. The 99 disciples were divided into 3 square formations under the command of the 3 Qian generation middle-aged disciples of the Xiao clan. Each square formation had 33 disciples, forming a square formation. The grouping was decided by drawing lots. This way, they could avoid a large disparity in strength, forming 3 classes. Di Ling Er and Chen Hao were indeed fated to be in the same class, and the 2 of them were standing together. Reporting, all 33 8th-generation disciples of Class 1 have arrived. The 33 8th-generation disciples of Class 2 are all present. The 33 8th-generation disciples of Class 3 are all present. After the 3 first-generation disciples finished reporting, they said in unison, Sixth Elder, Director Xiao, please give us your instructions. The 6th Elder, Xiaobo, slowly stood up and walked to the edge of the stage. Wearing a white robe, white hair, white beard, a pair of eyes like torches, and a kind face. Under the breeze, his robe and beard fluttered, and his body faintly emitted a faint brown light. He looked somewhat like an immortal. His gaze slowly swept across the 99 disciples, and softly said, Congratulations on passing the Xiao clan's test. From today onwards, you are all true disciples of the Xiao clan. The doors of the Xiao clan's martial arts will also be open for you. 24 years ago, the Xiao clan began to recruit outer disciples. Today, the Xiao clan's outer disciples can be found all over Yunzhou. Some are officials, some are businessmen, and all of them are elites of the elites with prominent identities. The Qian generation already has 25 inner disciples. The Qiu generation has 19, the Wan generation has 10, and the Dai generation has 3. After the Yong generation, many young experts have emerged. Today, you are proud of the Xiao clan. Tomorrow, the Xiao clan will be proud of you. Under Xiaobo's encouragement, the blood of all the young men and women surged. Only now did they truly understand the strength of the Xiao clan. The Xiao clan, one of the 4 great clans of Yunzhou County, had disciples all over Yunzhou, forming a huge network. Only now did Chen Hao understand that when the Xiao clan's disciples reached the age of 20, they would enter the Jianghu and become a member of the Xiao clan's huge network. They would integrate into the secular world and establish their own power. There were also some who stayed in the Xiao clan to continue cultivating and take up a position in the Xiao clan. For example, the 3 instructors of the Qian generation standing in front of them, and Xiao Guan. However, Xiao Bo suddenly changed the topic and said, "In these 24 years, although many inner disciples have been promoted, none of them have been promoted before the age of 20. If one is not promoted to an inner disciple before the age of 20, it means that it will be very difficult for one to become a true expert, a 9th-grade martial king. Our Xiao clan does not lack ordinary experts, but true experts are lacking in the future. Most of the Shi generation's disciples are between the ages of 18 and 20. Looking at the current situation, none of them can become a 7th-grade martial artist and be promoted to an inner disciple before the age of 20. Hope can only be born in the Xiang and Ji generations. So, our Xiao clan's patriarch, Xiao Ding, has promised a great reward. Between the Ji and Xiang generations, whoever is able to be the first to advance into an inner court disciple before the age of 20 will receive that great reward. The right to practice the Xiao clan's 3 great secret arts and a red refined fruit. Boom! The originally quiet martial arts practice field suddenly boiled with excitement. The 3 great secret arts. Return to Origin Heart Sutra, Splitting Mountain Palm, and Xiao clan's 9 swords. And the red refined fruit. If I can get it? Ah. The lively Ling Er actually danced with joy, her small face became red, and looked very cute. Is this reward very good? Chen Hao asked, a little puzzled. How is it only very good? You don't even know this? You seem to know very little. Let me tell you, the Xiao clan's 3 great secret arts are very, very famous. They are all level 6 martial arts, especially the Return to Origin Heart Sutra, which is comparable to a level 7 martial arts. And the red refined fruit is also a level 6 elixir. The Xiao clan is indeed the Xiao clan, so generous. Martial arts and elixirs are divided into 9 levels, and each level is divided into 3 levels, high, middle, and low. Level 6 cultivation techniques and level 6 elixirs were only available to martial emperors and above. In the Xiao clan, only the patriarch, guest elders, and other true experts are qualified to use them, but it's very rare to have the opportunity to do so. After listening to Ling Er's explanation, Chen Hao didn't get excited like her and the other youths, but his eyes became abnormally hot. Xiao Bo looked at the excited youth and slowly raised his hand, and the noise quickly subsided. He smiled and said, "Now, let's invite head instructor Xiao Guan to announce your new names." Xiao Guan coldly walked to the front of the stage and announced the new names from 1 to 99. Then with a cold face, he retreated. Chen Hao officially changed his name to Xiao Xianghao. After Xiao Guan and Xiao Bo left, the 3 instructors of the 1000th generation led their respective classes to the side. "My name is Xiao Qianrui, and I'll be your instructor from now on. You can call me Instructor Rui." Xiao Qianrui, a 36-year-old middle-aged man, was wearing a black instructor's uniform. Under the golden Xiao character on his left chest was his serial number, 38, and he was ranked 38th among the 1000th generation. "You, step forward." Xiao Qianrui suddenly pointed at the 2 youths in front of him and pointed at the thick stack of documents on the ground. "Distribute these, everyone except for number 99. "Yes, Instructor Rui." When the 2 youths began to distribute the documents, Xiao Qianrui looked at Chen Hao, who was standing at the back, and said, "Number 99, step forward." Chen Hao was stunned and hurriedly trotted to the front. "This is yours. If you don't understand, you can ask the others. Return to the group." Xiao Qianrui threw a document to Chen Hao and said coldly. Chen Hao had a bad feeling in his heart, as if he was being treated differently again. He knew that it was not something good. Clenching his fist tightly, Chen Hao suppressed the anger in the depths of his heart. He could only control himself. Only when he became a powerhouse would all the unfair treatment vanish into thin air. It turned out that the update time had been adjusted to prevent many students from staying up until 12 o'clock. From tomorrow onwards, 1 chapter would be updated at 8 o'clock in the morning, and another at 7 o'clock in the evening. Although there were only 2 chapters, Wuxian's 2 chapters had the same word count as many new books with 3 chapters. The new book had 6,000 words per day, which should be considered generous. There were more than 40 days of public release, and if there were occasional outbursts, there should be close to 300,000 public chapters by the time it was released. After resting for 2 months, although he thought about many things in his head, he was still a little rusty, and his writing speed was slow. However, Wuxian was confident that he could write Proud Heaven well. Also, let me reveal that this book does not have only one female protagonist, but there will not be many of them. A huge like Xian Tian will definitely not appear. I will try my best not to be stained by thousands of flowers. Women will never be a burden to Chen Hao. Chapter 6. Chen Hao took the piece of paper back to his seat. Looking at the dense handwriting on it, he could barely make out the numbers. There were also a few words that he had heard from others, but he didn't know what was written. But at this time, he couldn't ask anyone. He thought that he could only ask Di Ling Er when he got back. Okay, go back and read carefully. These are the rules of the Shao clan and your arrangements. They will be implemented from tomorrow onwards. If anyone disobeys, don't blame me for being impolite. Now you can go to the cafeteria to eat. Dismissed. Xiao Qinrui said after the 2 handed out the information. Di Ling Er quickly flipped through the information in her hand and turned to look at Chen Hao. Is yours different from ours? Let me see. Chen Hao hurriedly handed it over. Di Ling Er only flipped through 2 pages and frowned. She looked up at Chen Hao, who seemed to be confused and didn't have any reaction. She continued reading and frowned even more. How could this be? Di Ling Er, what does it say? Chen Hao asked awkwardly. Didn't you read it just now? I didn't go to school. I can't read. Chen Hao said with a red face. No wonder you didn't react. Di Ling Er whispered. The smart girl thought of Chen Hao's coarse linen clothes and was immediately filled with sympathy. But she didn't immediately tell Chen Hao what was written on it because she was worried that if she told him, Chen Hao wouldn't even have the mood to eat. I'll tell you when we get back. Let's go to the cafeteria first. But the Shao clan's cafeteria was specially opened for outer disciples. It was located in the middle of the outer disciples' dormitory area and was very large. It had a large hall that could accommodate up to 1,000 people and was filled with tables and chairs. When you entered, you could see that there was a row of 8 seats arranged according to the Shao clan's generation. Xiangxi's generation was at the far right. On the left side of the hall, there were private rooms and individual restaurants. These restaurants were self-funded. Unlike the free meals in the hall, those who came here to eat were the richer disciples of the Shao clan. However, most of them ate in the public hall. After all, the food of the Shao family was much better than that of the average wealthy family. Practicing martial arts consumed a lot of energy. If one's nutrition couldn't keep up, it would definitely affect one's cultivation speed. The Shao clan was naturally aware of this. Therefore, the Shao family naturally wouldn't be stingy with food. Chen Hao followed Di Ling Er to line up behind the Xiang generation. When it was Di Ling Yan's turn, she picked up 2 lunch boxes and handed one to Chen Hao before walking to the window. The chef in charge of serving the food gave her half a box of rice, then the chef in charge of serving the 3 meat dishes and 2 vegetable dishes. It's a very delicious dish and filled up the entire bowl for Di Ling Yan. Chen Hao looked at the white rice and big chunks of meat. He pursed his lips and walked to the front of the waiter who served the food. Number 99? When the chef saw Chen Hao's number, his eyes flashed with disdain. He took out a spoonful of rice and shook it 3 times, leaving only half a spoonful before putting it into Chen Hao's lunchbox. Chen Hao wanted to say something, but when he saw the chef waving to the next one, he knew that he had once again been treated unfairly. Following that, the chefs shook their food 3 times, leaving only a few dishes in his lunchbox. A trace of anger burned in Chen Hao's heart. Faces full of disdain appeared in his mind. 6th Elder Xiao Bo, the Shao clan disciple who led the way, the instructor Xiao Qinrui, and the 2 chefs in the canteen. Finally, it settled on a name, Xiao Jihan. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Chen Hao followed Di Ling to an empty table and sat down. The Xiao clan's food is really good. Xianxia, why is yours so little? Di Ling asked curiously when she saw that Chen Hao's lunchbox was less than half of hers. It's okay. Chen Hao pretended to be calm, but his voice was trembling. Although his mind matured earlier than other children, he was still only a 12-year-old child. Facing unfair treatment again and again, how could he hide the grievance, humiliation, and anger in his heart? Looking at Chen Hao stuffing food into his mouth, Di Ling thought that he should have been first, but he was last. There was also that information and the unfair treatment Chen Hao was receiving now. Although Di Ling was smart, she would never have thought that this was a conspiracy against Chen Hao. The naive her thought that all of this was caused by being last. These things should have been borne by her, who was really last. Xianxia, I have too much, I can't finish it, I'll share some with you. No need, I have enough. Chen Hao said softly. Indeed, these dishes were much less than the others, but to Chen Hao, it was already a lot. At least, it was a lot more than when he was at home. There was also meat. However, Di Ling still stubbornly lifted her lunchbox. Hee. Xiangling, Xianghao, I finally found you. At this moment, 8 little girls carrying lunchboxes came over and sat at the table Chen Hao and Di Ling. A round table, just enough for 10 people. These 8 little girls were the ones who lived in the shabby dormitory with Chen Hao and Di Ling. Xiangling, you can't finish it either? Such a big box, how do you want us to finish it? Xianghao, I'll share some with you. One of the girls saw Di Ling trying to give Chen Hao some food and suddenly said, I can't finish it either, Xianghao, help me. Suddenly, one after another, Chen Hao didn't give a chance to refuse and his lunchbox was filled by Di Ling and the others. Using his own hunger to fill the stomach of his younger siblings, Chen Hao often did this. But using Di Ling's hunger to fill his stomach, Chen Hao would never do that. However, in the face of the many girls who wanted to eat but couldn't, he wouldn't refuse. His appetite was amazing since he was a child. It's just that after he became sensible, he never ate a full meal again. So, in the blink of an eye, Chen Hao finished a big box full of food in front of the stunned eyes of Di Ling and the other girls. His expression was calm, and there was no sign of him being full, causing the girls to stare at him with their eyes wide open. Xianghao, you can eat. I still have so much, why don't you help us again? Yeah, help us again, I only gave you a little bit and it's already full, how can I finish so much? The 2 girls spoke while they were talking and when the other girls saw this, they also took action. In the blink of an eye, Chen Hao's empty lunchbox was filled again. You really can't finish it? Chen Hao asked embarrassedly. Of course. I won't hold back, thank you. Chen Hao said softly, that handsome face flashed a trace of gratitude. Please collect it? I'm still watching it. Please remember to collect it and recommend it. Thank you. Chapter 7. By the time he returned to the dormitory, the sky was already completely dark. Chen Hao opened the information in his hand and read it very carefully. Although he didn't understand it, he read it very seriously, word by word. After reading it from beginning to end, Chen Hao slowly closed his eyes and the words came alive in his mind. Although he didn't know the meaning of these words, he was sure that he could write it down completely without missing a word. Photographic memory. Just like his hearing and vision, his memory is also far beyond ordinary people. From the beginning of his memory until now, he never forgot anything he heard or saw. Chen Hao, are you asleep? At this moment, Di Ling Yan's voice sounded from the door. No. Chen Hao hurriedly responded and opened the door. Chen Hao knew that Di Ling Yan had finished reading his information and came to help him. Di Ling Yan, I'll have to trouble you. Just help me read it one by one. Chen Hao handed the information in his hand to Di Ling Yan and said softly. Okay, light the lamp first. It's dark, how can I read it? Okay. Chen Hao hurriedly lit the lamp. Chen Hao, after you finish reading, don't be angry, I think. When you can read, you will be like us. Di Ling Yan said softly. She had already roughly read the first few pages, so she roughly knew what Chen Hao was going to face. I won't. Under the dim light, Chen Hao's eyes shined like stars. He whispered but firmly said. He believed that the unfair treatment will change as he becomes stronger. Di Ling Yen responded, opened the information, and began to read. Today, you are proud of the Xiao family. Tomorrow, the Xiao family will be proud of you. The first page of the opening was these 16 words. When Di Ling Yen read it out, Chen Hao also matched these 16 words with the words in his mind. The rules of the Xiao clan disciples. Any disciple of the Xiao clan had to abide by the following rules. If they violated any of these rules, the lightest punishment would be to face the wall and reflect on their mistakes. The heaviest punishment would be to cripple their martial arts and expel them from the clan. You must remember this. Lil Ling read the information out loud, but when she read it out loud, she changed it a little so that Chen Hao could understand. Wait, Lil Ling Chen Hao suddenly frowned and interrupted Lil Ling What's wrong? Di Ling Yen asked curiously. You don't have to add words. Just read it as written. I can understand it. Oh, okay. Di Ling Yen said and began reading again. Xiao family's 8th generation outer sect disciple, Xiao Xianghao schedule. After reading the rules of the Xiao family and the things that Xiao family disciples must know, Di Ling Yen finally read the schedule that was specially written for Chen Hao. The content at the beginning was the same as the other disciples, but this part was special. Di Ling Yen was worried that Chen Hao wouldn't be able to handle it after seeing the contents of this page. Di Ling Yen stopped. Chen Hao also opened his eyes. You read it, Di Ling Yen. I'll be fine. Chen Hao looked at Di Ling Yan's embarrassed face and said softly with a smile. So what if it was unfair? What kind of hardships have I not suffered? Now that I have food and clothes, with these 2 points, it's already much better than before. He can endure, but it doesn't mean that he will always endure. All of this was brought to him by that genius called Xiao Jihan. One day, he will use his strength to tell this genius that he, Chen Hao, is not someone who can be bullied by others. Di Ling Yen responded. First, from 6 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., go to the Imperial Library's Xiao Family Academy for the morning reading. Second, from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m., go to the Imperial Library's Xiao Family Academy for the morning reading. Third, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., go to the Imperial Library's Xiao Family Academy for the morning reading. The above 3 conditions are to be carried out today without delay until you have learned the entire boundless sea of learning. From beginning to end, there was not a single word for martial. After reading this page, Di Ling Yen thought that Chen Hao would be unwilling, sad, or angry. But when she looked at Chen Hao, she found that he was very calm. Other than those bright eyes that seemed to be shining brighter, there was no change at all. One must know that in addition to the 3,400 common words, there are more than 60,000 non-common words, adding up to nearly 70,000 words. Even Di Ling Yen only knows the common words, so how could it be easy to learn the entire boundless sea of learning? Even the great scholars of the present era can't guarantee that they can learn it all, especially the ancient immortal text, which is incomparably complex. It's not something that can be done in 1 or 2 years. However, such an arduous task actually fell on Chen Hao, a person who had never even gone to school. This is purely making things difficult. Continue reading, Di Ling Yen. Chen Hao said softly. Yes. Di Ling Yen turned to the next page, which was also the last page. She had never seen this page before. But when she saw it before she could even read it, she was angry. Why is it like this? This is too much of a bully. Should the last place be like this? Di Ling Yen said angrily. Looking at Di Ling Yan's expression, Chen Hao said, Di Ling Yen, you don't have to worry about me, you read it. No matter what it is, I will definitely do it. Do it? How can you learn it all in 3 months? Moreover, they even want to expel you. How can the Xiao family be so unreasonable? So what if I'm the last place? Should I be bullied like this? What's more, this last place should be me. Di Ling Yen said, her big eyes were filled with tears. In just half a day, the kind Di Ling Yen has already regarded Chen Hao as her friend. Is this the book? I can remember it. It won't take 3 months, Di Ling Yen, don't worry. Chen Hao comforted her. You can remember it, but can the person who will teach you finish it in 3 months? Can't they finish it? Chen Hao, who knows nothing about the school, asked naively. Di Ling Yen was really hit by Chen Hao's ignorance. She seemed to see the end of Chen Hao 3 months later. But looking at Chen Hao's confident and firm eyes, she didn't know why, but she felt that he might really be able to do it. Under Chen Hao's request, Di Ling Yen read the contents of the last page. There was only one sentence, but it made Di Ling Yen angry for Chen Hao. The Xiao family is founded on martial arts. Therefore, after 3 months, if Xiao Xianghao is unable to start practicing the Xiao family's martial arts, he will be expelled from the school. This information is specifically targeted at Chen Hao. It can be said to be a cunning old fox, attacking and defending at the same time. Knowing the entirety of the boundless sea of learning, under normal circumstances, can be understood as knowing all 3,400 commonly used words. 3,400 commonly used words is difficult for an ordinary person to master in 3 months. Chen Hao is basically destined to be eliminated. But if Chen Hao is a genius, then knowing all the words in the boundless sea of learning can be understood as knowing all the words in the boundless sea of learning. Of course, this is on the basis that no one will investigate. 6th Elder Xiao Bo didn't think that anyone would use this to make things difficult for him, and no one would even ask about this information. Di Ling Yen, it's okay, I've already learned all the thousands of words in this book. You just have to read this book for me and I'll remember it. I don't need a teacher to teach me. Chen Hao looked at the sad Di Ling Yen and pretended to be relaxed. You remember it all? Are you serious? Di Ling Yen stared at Chen Hao with wide eyes. Yes, I remember it. After a while, Di Ling Yen finally confirmed that Chen Hao is the kind of freak with a photographic memory. I only know the first 3,000 commonly used words. As for the rest, I don't know much. Di Ling Yen said, you have to find someone else to help you, otherwise you won't be able to learn it in the academy. Find someone else to help? Hearing Di Ling Yan's words, Chen Hao's mind suddenly has an angel-like figure. My name is Xiao Ji Yen, I'll be your senior sister from now on. Remember to call me senior sister? Hee, I finally have a junior brother. Okay, I'm going to cultivate. If you have any difficulties in the future, remember to ask senior sister for help. Senior sister is very powerful, hee. Thinking of the angel-like girl Xiao Jiyen, Chen Hao shook his head. They've only met once, and she's about the same age as Di Ling Yen. Even if she's willing to help, she probably won't be able to recognize many words. Well, now help me read the words you know. I'll see how much you can learn. There's still 3 months left. There's nothing to be afraid of. Chen Hao said. Although Di Ling Yen feels that the hope is slim, but looking at Chen Hao's confident eyes, she can't bear to discourage him. She secretly decided in her heart that if there's no other way, she can only ask her father for help. In any case, she must not let Chen Hao be expelled from the Xiao family. Thinking of this, Di Ling Yen made an "n" sound and picked up the thick book. Side by side, the two began to read. In less than half an hour, while Di Ling Yen was still in shock, Chen Hao has already learned all the words she knows. Not only can he read them out loud, but Chen Hao can also quickly write out a word that Di Ling Yen says. This powerful memory is not as simple as just having a photographic memory. After Di Ling Yen went back to rest, Chen Hao immersed himself in the book. After an entire night, until dawn, Chen Hao finally imprinted all the words in the book, including the complex immortal characters, into his mind. Quang. Not long after Chen Hao finished watching the Boundless Sea of Learning, the crisp yet distant sound of the clock rang throughout the entire Xiao family. 5 Dong and 1 Quang. From yesterday's information, Chen Hao knows that it's now 5:30 in the morning. The sound of the night watch is the sound to wake the Xiao family's disciples up. Chen Hao simply washed his face, retied his long hair, and walked out of the room. His eyes are still clear, like the stars in the night sky. His spirit is still full, without a trace of exhaustion after staying up all night. Taking a deep breath of fresh air, Chen Hao turned his head to look at Di Ling Yan's room. The light is already on. Di Ling Yan should have already woken up. However, Chen Hao knows that her arrangement is different from his. She has to go to the martial arts field to participate in the first morning exercise to learn the Xiao family's martial arts. And he has to rush to the elementary school of the profound library. The map of the Xiao family appeared in his mind. Chen Hao quickly ran out of the dormitory area. In the past, he rarely ran because it would make him hungrier, so he never knew that he could run so fast. But last night he ate a lot. Although he was still not full, he knew that the food would give him strength for at least 3 days. And he knows that he can eat 3 meals a day now, so he doesn't have to worry about not having food. So, he ran very fast. He likes the feeling of flying. Chen Hao ran at an amazing speed. It took him only a few minutes to arrive at the profound library, which would have taken nearly half an hour. This is the Wen Yuan Pavilion. I know these 3 words. Chen Hao looked at the 3 solemn and quaint characters on the plaque and thought to himself. Then he slowed down and walked in slowly. A wide bluestone road led directly to a huge building. On both sides of the road were quiet gardens. There were winding paths in the gardens, which were full of flowers and plants that Chen Hao didn't know. Beside the 2 gardens, there were 2 slightly smaller buildings. The huge building facing the gate was the advanced school of the Xiao family. The building on the left side of the garden was the elementary school, and the building on the right side was the intermediate school. Although Chen Hao had prepared himself, he was still shocked when he saw the 3 huge schools. He had seen the school where Buttface studied. It was the biggest and best school in Taiping town, but it couldn't be compared with the school of the Xiao family. The Xiao family was founded on martial arts. However, the Xiao family didn't become one of the 4 big families of the Yunzhou only by martial arts. The real strength of the Xiao family was the combination of literature and martial arts. Because of this, all the disciples of the Xiao family had to go to school every morning in addition to cultivation. Poetry, books, etiquette, astronomy, geography, the way of being an official, the way of doing business, everything was covered. However, those were the contents of the intermediate and advanced schools. Chen Hao was going to the elementary school, which was the first step of learning how to read and write. The new disciples of the Xiao family usually went to the intermediate school directly. As for the elementary school, it was opened for the children of the Xiao family. These children included the direct descendants of the Xiao family, the children of the Xiao family's inner disciples, and the children of the outer disciples who stayed in the Xiao family to work. Most of them were children between 5 and 8 years old. Only the children of the elementary school of the Xiao family attended the morning reading. At this time, the entire profound library was very quiet. Except for Chen Hao, no one else had come. Chen Hao took the boundless sea of learning to the entrance of the elementary school. With the help of the weak light, he read it again. Although he had completely memorized it, he still flipped to the last part of the boundless sea of learning, the immortal text. He didn't know why, but although he didn't know these immortal text, when he read it, it gave him a very special feeling. Especially the complicated crisscrossing lines of the immortal text that were full of natural and smooth lines, it made Chen Hao feel very comfortable. It seemed that every time he read it, there was a different feeling. His thoughts seemed to be gradually immersed in it. Just as Chen Hao was engrossed in reading, a figure appeared beside him. However, Chen Hao, who was immersed in the immortal text, didn't notice and continued to read attentively. The person who came was slightly surprised, especially when he saw Chen Hao reading the immortal text at the end of the boundless sea of learning, and was so engrossed in it he was even more surprised. Ahem, ahem. The person coughed twice. Chen Hao was suddenly awakened. When he saw an old man beside him, he immediately imitated the way Buttface and the others behaved when they saw their teacher. He bowed respectfully and said in a low voice, "Hello, sir. Second update, a 4,000-word chapter. Please help to bookmark and recommend it. Wu Shan is working hard to write. The result of the new book depends on everyone. Thank you." Also, the VIP book group for the Proud Madzun has been opened. Group number 1533979. Welcome VIP users to join. You need to verify to enter the group. Thank you. Chapter 8. The old man's gaze lingered on Qinhao's face for a moment before he said, "You are Xiao Xianghao, the 8th-generation disciple of the Xiao family?" "Yes, sir," Qinhao said respectfully again. This time, it was respect from the bottom of his heart. Before coming, Qinhao had thought of many possibilities. He had thought that he would still face the same cold eyes, disdain, and unfair treatment as the 6th elder, Xiao Bo, and the others. However, from the old man's gaze, Qinhao did not see any disdain. "Can you understand it?" The old man saw that you were very engrossed in it just now. The old man pointed at Qinhao's, the boundless sea of learning, with a kind smile on his face and asked softly, "I don't understand it, sir." "Then why are you reading it with so much interest?" The old man saw Qinhao's restraint and gently patted Qinhao's head. He smiled and said, "Child, don't be restrained." The old man was wearing a loose and simple gray robe. Unlike the other members of the Xiao family, there was no golden Xiao character on his chest. Qinhao raised his head and looked at the kind old man. He said, "When I looked at these words, I felt... I couldn't describe it, I just felt very comfortable." Qinhao did not know how to describe that feeling and could only use the word comfortable to replace it. The old man's eyes suddenly lit up. After a pause, he said, very good, you will learn from me from now on." Qinhao did not understand what the old man meant by very good, but he knew that the old man in front of him was not like the others. He had no ill intentions towards him. This was a kind of intuition. Just like how he could feel the sympathy and pity for him under the harsh and even fierce appearance of Buttface's mother. He could feel the old man's kindness. "Sir, can you teach me how to read?" Qinhao raised his head and looked at the old man's kind face. He plucked up his courage and asked. "Of course. Let's go inside," the old man said. At this moment, a few figures entered the profound library. They were chatting and laughing as they walked over. When they saw the old man and Qinhao, they immediately bowed respectfully and said in unison, "Greetings, Elder Xiao." The kind smile on the old man's face disappeared as he calmly looked at the crowd. His gaze fell on one of the middle-aged men as he said, "From now on, this child will be taught by me. He won't go to your class for morning reading." The middle-aged man called Wen Yu was slightly surprised, but he was still very respectful and said without the slightest reluctance, "Yes, Elder Xiao." Qinhao could tell that these people should be the teachers of the beginner class, and from the old man's words, it seemed that he was originally arranged to be in the class of the middle-aged man called Wen Yu, but the old man changed it with one sentence. Seeing their respect for the old man, Qinhao knew that the old man in front of him had a very high status. However, he did not know how high his status was. "Let's go, Xianghao." The old man's face once again returned to its kind expression as he smiled and held Qinhao's hand as he turned and walked forward. However, what made Qinhao surprised was that the old man was not leading him to the beginner class nor the intermediate class, but the advanced class. Looking at the back of the old man leading Qinhao, these teachers were all shocked, especially the middle-aged man called Wen Yu. "Wen Yu, who is that child?" At this moment, one of the teachers asked. The others also looked curiously at the middle-aged man called Wen Yu, an 8th-generation disciple who just passed the Xiao family's test. "Strange, then why was he arranged to be in your class? He should be in the intermediate class, right? He hasn't been to school, so he can't read." Xiao Wen Yu stared at the back of the old man and Qinhao and said absent-mindedly. Speaking to this point, he suddenly turned to look at the teacher next to him and said, "Wen Yuan, help me take care of my class. My old illness is acting up again. I have to go back and take some medicine. Okay, go quickly." Xiao Wen Yuan did not doubt him and said. When all the people who specialized in teaching in the Xiao family used words as their names. After Xiao Wen Yu left, the crowd also walked towards the beginner class. From afar, their voices floated out. "This child is lucky to be valued by old Xiao. Isn't that so? But it's very strange. He looks like he's 11 or 12 years old and can't read. Why would old Xiao value him?" Old Xiao, everyone in the Xiao family had to respectfully call him Old Xiao. No one knew what his real name was and no one knew how old he was. The only thing everyone knew was that the direct descendants of the Xiao family, including the current head of the Xiao family, Xiao Ding, all addressed him as Old Ancestor when they saw him. The Xiao family was established through martial arts. 40 years ago, there was no such thing as a school in the Xiao family. At that time, the Xiao family was only an inconspicuous small family in Yunzhou County. However, it was also 40 years ago that the old ancestor of the Xiao family, who had always been indifferent to worldly affairs, suddenly appeared and established the Wenyuan Pavilion in the Xiao family, which was the current Xiao family school. He also forced every Xiao family disciple to enter the school to study. At that time, everyone in the Xiao family was puzzled. However, even the head of the Xiao family, who was also the father of the current head of the Xiao family, did not dare to refute and could only obey. Today, 40 years later, the Xiao family had undergone a great change, rising to the ranks of the 4 major families in Yunzhou County. However, although old Xiao had established the Wenyuan Pavilion, which was the Xiao family school, he had never taught the Xiao family disciples. Every year, he would only examine the disciples' literary achievements, that was all. However, 6 years ago, old Xiao discovered Xiao Jiyan and doted on her very much. He took her under his wing and personally taught her. Xiao Jiyan was the first and only Xiao family disciple to receive old Xiao's favor. Today, Chen Hao was the second. Chen Hao, a new disciple who had never attended school, actually received old Xiao's favor. This was indeed shocking and inconceivable to the teachers. While they were envious, they were also puzzled. Why would old Xiao take a fancy to him? Before Chen Hao reported to the Xiao family school, 6th elder Xiao Bo had already reported to old Xiao that among the 99 disciples of the Xiang generation, 98 of them had entered the Xiao family's intermediate school, and 1 disciple who had never attended school had entered the elementary school. This was a routine for every batch of Xiao family disciples. After receiving the name list, old Xiao would distribute the disciples evenly into the corresponding classes. He would also inform all the teachers. Because Chen Hao was the only disciple in the past 24 years who had passed the Xiao family's test but had never attended school, he was also the only one who would be assigned to the elementary class. Therefore, old Xiao had a deep impression of his name, Xiao Xiang Hao. That was why the scene just now happened. Chen Hao was surprised and flattered. Under the guidance of the old man, he nervously entered the advanced school and went to the top floor. There was a small independent room. The room's decoration was very simple. There was a short table made of unknown wood. On the short table, there was a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone. There were 2 cushions in front and behind the short table. There was also a tea table by the side. On the wall facing the door, there was an unusually old calligraphy painting. The first thing Chen Hao saw when he entered the door was that calligraphy painting. There was only 1 word in the calligraphy painting, and it was written in Immortal script. Chen Hao recognized its appearance, but he didn't know what it was reciting. But the moment he saw this word, he was deeply attracted. His eyes were unknowingly immersed in it, and he felt a majestic, heavy, and faintly discernible aura. Majestic like the vast ocean, unfathomable, heavy like a mountain, unshakable, faintly discernible like a dream, unfathomable. But he felt even more clearly a strand of willpower, an unyielding willpower that was undefeated and indomitable, and it seemed like a formidable willpower that wanted to compete with the heavens. Seeing this scene, old Zhao's eyes once again flashed a ray of light. Following that, a kind smile appeared on his face as he silently looked at the young man in front of him. He gently sat cross-legged on the cushion, and his breathing gradually disappeared. His gaze was serene as he looked at the motionless Chen Hao. Boom, boom, boom. A series of roars resounded in Chen Hao's mind. He felt as if he had become a lone boat in the vast ocean, and could be swallowed by the monstrous waves at any time. He also felt as if he had become a life under a towering mountain, and could be smashed into pieces at any time. In a moment, Chen Hao's body was drenched in sweat, and his breathing had become abnormally heavy. Old Xiao stared at him motionlessly, and the surprise in his eyes became stronger and stronger. P.S. Chidian has launched a Great God's Light event. There is a promotion on the homepage. The link is http://www.ploy20120615/author title index. If you are interested and have the ability to win the award, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Also, don't forget to bookmark and recommend _intersection. Thank you again. Chapter 9. A quarter of an hour, half an hour, an hour. Time passed second by second. Elder Xiao, who was originally calm, was so excited that he could no longer sit still. He stood up and stared at Qianhao. Time continued to pass. The sea breeze whistled, setting off monstrous waves. The boat was sometimes thrown into the sky and sometimes submerged by the sea, but every time it would emerge from the sea with great difficulty. The majestic mountain became heavier and heavier, as if it wanted to crush Qianhao into powder. Everything was like a dream, but in Qianhao's mind, it was so real. He clenched his teeth and stubbornly held on. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was that he could not die. For his parents, for his younger siblings, he could not die. About 2 hours later, Elder Zhao's figure suddenly flashed and floated to the door like a ghost. Silently, he gently covered the mouth of a girl. This girl was Xiao Jiyan. She was Elder Zhao's first disciple. At this time, it was already 8 o'clock. It was Xiao Jiyan's daily class time. Xiao Jiyan looked at the young man in front of her in surprise. Just from his back, she could not recognize who he was, but she knew what happened to him. This was because she had once experienced the same thing. Although that experience had passed 6 years ago, it was still deeply etched in her memory. That time, she only lasted for 15 minutes before collapsing in Elder Zhao's arms. Time continued to pass. Xiao Jiyan's beautiful eyes that were filled with spirituality became more and more shocked. 3 hours passed, and in the blink of an eye, 4 hours had passed. At this time, Qianhao suddenly shouted. A golden light rose from his mind and broke through the dreamlike space. At the same time, Elder Zhao's figure flashed and supported Qianhao's falling body. At this time, Qianhao finally woke up. He gasped for breath and his clothes were drenched in sweat. He looked at the old man who was holding him in shock. He did not understand what had happened to him. Why did such a strange and mysterious scene appear in his mind? Very good, very good. Child, what's your name? I mean your real name. It's you, junior brother? Xiao Jiyan, who had been standing at the door for 2 hours, finally saw the young man's face. She recognized his delicate and pretty face at a glance. You know each other? Elder Xiao asked curiously. Ancestor, of course we know him. He's my junior brother. His real name is Qianhao. His nickname is Tianxi, right? Before Qianhao could answer, Xiao Jiyan said with a smile. Her beautiful big eyes stared curiously at Qianhao, as if she had seen something fun. There was envy, admiration, and a trace of pride in her eyes. Yes, little junior brother, you're really amazing. You actually managed to hold on for so long. Back then, I only managed to hold on for a little more than 10 minutes. But I was a few years younger than you at that time. I'm also very powerful. At the first sight of you, I felt that you were different from others. Hehe, as expected. Qianhao, nickname of Tianxi? Is this a gift from the heavens to this old man? Elder Xiao murmured, unable to hide the excitement on his old face. After Qianhao looked at the old man, his eyes turned to the angelic girl, Xiao Jiyan, and said, Senior sister, just now, what happened to me? It was a test of your aptitude. The ancestor said that the longer you persist, the better your aptitude will be. You actually managed to hold on for so long. That's really amazing. Xiao Jiyan said, Right, ancestor? Huh? Very good, very good. Qianhao, you did very well. From today onwards, you and little Yen will study at my place. Elder Xiao returned to his senses and said softly with a smile. Qianhao hurriedly bowed and said, Thank you, sir. You can just call me Elder Xiao in the future. Elder Xiao said, Jiyan, go get a futon and let's sit down. Qianhao, you take a seat first. Xiao Jiyan ran out excitedly. At the age of 13, she would study at Elder Zhao's place every morning. She was lively and active by nature, but although Elder Xiao doted on her, he was very serious when teaching her, especially when he made her practice a very strange martial art, which was very boring. This made her feel that it was not fun at all. However, now that she had a cute little junior brother to accompany her, it would definitely be more interesting in the future. This made Xiao Jian very happy. After a while, Xiao Jian hugged a futon and sat next to Chen Hao. "Are you hungry?" Elder Xiao looked at Chen Hao with concern and asked. From 6 in the morning until now, Chen Hao had persisted for a total of 4 hours, even delaying breakfast time in the middle. "I'm not hungry, Elder Xiao." As soon as Chen Hao finished speaking, his stomach failed to live up to his expectations and growled. However, this degree of hunger was nothing to Chen Hao. "Hee ancestor, I'm hungry." Xiao Jian cutely smiled at Chen Hao, then turned around and looked at Elder Xiao with a pitiful look. At the same time, her small hand gently pinched Chen Hao's waist. Chen Hao was puzzled. "Girl, it's not good to eat too much of that thing," Elder Xiao said as he took out an exquisite jade box from under the table and gently opened it. Immediately, a strong fruity fragrance wafted out from within. Chen Hao saw that the jade box actually contained a few fruits that he had never seen before. The fruits were slightly bigger than walnuts, flat and transparent like crystal grapes, but the color was translucent with a trace of milky white. Xiao Jian blinked her big eyes and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Even Chen Hao had a strong impulse to swallow the fruit the moment he saw it. It didn't seem to be just to fill his stomach, as if something was attracting him. This is the breeze fruit. It takes 100 years for this tree to grow, then 10 years to flower and 10 years to bear fruit. Each tree can produce a maximum of 100 fruits at a time. Our Xiao family only has one. Elder Xiao said softly, although this fruit is only a level 2 spirit herb, it has a special effect of tempering the body. It's not comparable to ordinary level 2 spirit herbs. You will understand this in the future, Elder Xiao said as he took out 2 fruits from the box and handed one to Chen Hao. "This is for you." "Oh no, Elder Xiao. I'm not hungry." Chen Hao hurriedly refused. Although Chen Hao hadn't seen much of the world, he knew that this fruit was extremely precious from Elder Zhao's description. Just the fact that it could be called a spirit herb meant that ginseng, bird's nest, and so on could not be compared to it. Not to mention that it was a level 2 spirit herb with a special effect. How could he accept such a precious thing? "Junior brother, it's very delicious." You don't have to be polite with the ancestor." Xiao Jian directly took the other fruit from Elder Zhao's hand and put it in front of her nose. After smelling it deeply, she gently took a bite and tasted it carefully with an intoxicated look on her face. Elder Xiao looked at Chen Hao with a trace of appreciation in his eyes and said softly, "Eat it. Although the breeze fruit is precious, you are qualified to enjoy it with your aptitude. It's also beneficial to your cultivation. You are my disciple and this is what I hope to see. Eat it." "Thank you, Elder Xiao." Chen Hao said gratefully and bowed deeply to Elder Xiao. He could see Elder Zhao's sincerity and concern. After watching Chen Hao eat, Elder Xiao said, "Chen Hao, I will now teach you a set of cultivation technique. Once you learn this cultivation technique, you won't need to cultivate any of the Xiao family's internal cultivation techniques and you are not allowed to tell anyone about it. Although the progress of this cultivation technique is relatively slow, you will know its benefits in the future. Therefore, from today onwards, you must cultivate for at least 2 hours every day. The first few months will be more painful." Cultivation technique? Chen Hao's eyes suddenly widened and a strong and persistent light flashed in his eyes. At this time, any cultivation technique would have a strong attraction to Chen Hao. He originally thought that it would be impossible for him to learn any of the Xiao family's martial arts within 3 months. He didn't expect that Elder Xiao, who had decided to teach him how to read and write, would teach him a cultivation technique first. This made Chen Hao excited. Elder Xiao smiled and said, "This cultivation technique is called Longevity's Secret Art, a level 7 cultivation technique. Brothers and sisters, can you help me collect it after you read it? It's a new book that needs all your support. Please." Chapter 10. Please add it to your collection and recommend it. Thank you. Level 7 Cultivation Technique? Chen Hao was a little surprised as his eyes widened. After all, Xiaobao had said yesterday that only the first person from the Ji and Xiang generation that was promoted to an inner court disciple would be able to obtain the reward of cultivating the 3 great ultimate techniques of the Xiao clan. Amongst them, the strongest, the Origin Return Heart Sutra, was only a level 6 cultivation technique, but now, old Xiao was actually going to teach him the level 7 cultivation technique, Longevity Secret Art. Don't be surprised. Although Longevity Secret Art is a level 7 cultivation technique and the strongest cultivation technique in the Xiao family, not everyone can cultivate it. The most basic requirement is to have a spiritual root. In the entire Xiao family, only you and Jiyan have spiritual roots. Longevity Secret Art is divided into 9 levels. I'll teach you the first level now. After old Xiao finished speaking, he slowly recited the Longevity Secret Arts mantra. Chen Hao listened attentively. After a few minutes, old Xiao finished reciting and said, "How much have you memorized?" "I've memorized it all," Chen Hao said. "You've memorized it all?" Old Xiao and Xiao Jiyan asked at the same time. It's just that. I don't quite understand," Chen Hao said embarrassedly. Old Xiao said, "Recite it first." But Chen Hao responded and slowly recited it. What surprised old Xiao and Xiao Jiyan was that not only did Chen Hao memorize it word for word, he even imitated old Xiao's tone and pauses perfectly. The only difference was that his voice was more tender. "Good, good." Old Xiao's eyes flashed as he repeated the word, "good," twice. The total number of times he said the word, "good," in the past few decades was not as much as today. Mental cultivation methods and mnemonic chants were all cryptic and hard to understand. However, Chen Hao did not make a single mistake. Then, old Xiao explained it to Chen Hao one by one and explained some of the problems he would encounter during the cultivation process. When Chen Hao understood everything, it was almost 12 o'clock. "All right, you guys go eat. Xianghao, you can come here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll start teaching you how to read." Elder Xiao smiled and said, "Little girl, you have to work hard. Don't let Xianghao surpass you. There are still 7 years left. It's not difficult for you to break through to the martial emperor realm, but the sooner you do it, the better. Do you understand?" "I understand, old ancestor. Look, I'm already a 3rd-grade martial warrior. Next year, I'll definitely advance to martial master." Saying so, Xiao Jiyan's aura suddenly changed, and 2 pale green lights flashed from her eyes. Green was the symbol of a martial warrior's elemental energy. The higher the grade, the darker the color. A 9th-grade martial artist's color was dark green, while a 3rd-grade martial artist's color was light green. "That's good. You can go now." Elder Xiao slowly closed his eyes after he finished speaking. Martial disciple, martial student, martial warrior, martial master, martial emperor. A 9th-grade martial emperor can become a guest elder of the Xiao clan. That's a true expert. Can she reach that level before the age of 20? Chen Hao looked at Xiao Jiyan with shock in his heart. Although he was ignorant, he still understood the classification of martial artists from Ling. A martial emperor was already a true expert. As for the martial emperor, martial ancestor, martial saint, and martial god, they were all legendary realms. At least in Yunzhou County, a martial emperor would be considered a peak expert. However, both Elder Xiao and Xiao Jiyan seemed to be very confident. Is it really that simple to become a martial emperor? However, Chen Hao was only surprised for a moment before he stopped thinking about it. What he should be concerned about now is whether he can learn the entire boundless sea of learning in 3 months. Looking at Elder Xiao, who had already closed his eyes, Chen Hao mustered up his courage and said softly, "Elder Xiao, Elder Xiao slowly opened his eyes. "Is there anything else?" "I want to know. Can Elder Xiao teach me the entire boundless sea of learning in 3 months?" Chen Hao asked softly. "Of course I can. 3,400 commonly used words in 3 months. It might be difficult for ordinary people, but for you, it's very simple. There won't be any problems at all," Elder Xiao said with a smile. He had seen Chen Hao's amazing memory with his own eyes. Not to mention 3 months, Elder Xiao was sure that he could complete it in 3 days. Elder Xiao, what I mean is, it's not the 3,400 commonly used words. I've already learned them. Chen Hao said. Then what do you mean? Elder Xiao was slightly puzzled. Within 3 months, I must learn the entire boundless sea of learning or else I will be expelled from the Xiao family. Chen Hao said with his head lowered. Expelled from the Xiao family? You mean, if you can't learn the entire boundless sea of learning, you will be expelled from the Xiao family? Elder Xiao seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. His disciple being expelled from the Xiao family? Who would have such guts? Even Xiao Ding wouldn't dare. Yes, ha. What a joke. You are now my disciple. Without my permission, no one can, and no one dares to, expel you from the Xiao family. I think you've misunderstood. Learning the entire boundless sea of learning doesn't mean that you have to learn all the words. You only need to learn the commonly used words. You must know that even the great scholars of the current generation can't truly learn the entire boundless sea of learning because the immortal characters in the boundless sea of learning are incomparably complex. Even the great scholars who originally compiled the boundless sea of learning couldn't understand it. They only collected the incomplete immortal character inscriptions that were circulating in the secular world, copied them, and organized them together. Elder Xiao said. Elder Xiao's voice wasn't loud, but the certainty in his tone was unquestionable. Hearing Elder Xiao's words, Chen Hao knew that he could put down the burden in his heart and cultivate in peace. After bowing and saying thank you, he walked out with Xiao Jian. When Chen Hao entered the illusory world of the calligraphy painting, Xiao Wenyu, who was using his old illness as an excuse, hurriedly found the 6th Elder Xiao Bo and told him the news that Chen Hao was valued by Elder Xiao. After hearing this news, the 6th Elder's old face suddenly became very ugly. Who was Elder Xiao? Others might not know, but as a direct descendant of the Xiao clan and an elder of the Xiao clan, he naturally knew. The reason why the Xiao clan was where it was today was all because of Elder Xiao. He knew very well that in the secular world, any family with a little bit of fame would definitely have a powerhouse protecting them from behind. And the true guardian of the Xiao clan was Elder Xiao. 100 years ago, the Xiao clan rose from a small clan to one of the 4 great clans of the Yunzhou County. It could be said that it was all because of Elder Xiao. Without him, the Xiao clan wouldn't be where it was today. What was Elder Xiao's cultivation? Even as a 6th-rank martial monarch, he couldn't see the slightest trace of it. Every time he met Elder Xiao, he only felt that Elder Xiao was unfathomable. You may leave. Treat this matter as if it never happened, 6th Elder Xiao Bo said with a gloomy face. Yes, 6th Elder. Xiao Wenyu looked at the 6th Elder's uncertain expression and felt uneasy. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he bowed and replied. Maintaining his posture, he carefully retreated out of the room. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and quickly leave. After Xiao Wenyu left, 6th Elder Xiao Bo coldly ordered, "Call Xiao Jihan over." A figure quickly floated out and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. First update. Speaking of updates, some readers said to Wuxian, if you want to support a new book, you need to update twice a day. Look at so-and-so when he writes his new book, he updates 5, 6, 7 or 8 times a day. Seeing such comments, Wuxian really had the urge to vomit blood. Brother, my dear brother, ignorance isn't scary. What's scary is ignorance and yet shamelessly boasting. Any author would increase their popularity during the release of their new book. Basically, they would publish about 200,000 words a day. Furthermore, most of the new books would publish about 2,000 words a chapter. Wuxian's average of 6,000 words a day could be split into 3 chapters. Wasn't that generous? Furthermore, the book was published on the 17th. The public period would be 44 days. Based on the average of 6,000 words a day, it would be 260,000 words a day. Furthermore, when it's trying to get into the rankings, it would definitely explode occasionally. When it's published, it might exceed 300,000 words. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. Finally, I would like to invite friends who support Wuxian and Proud Heaven to support Wuxian on Qidian Chinese Network. I don't expect to receive any rewards. Free clicks, favorites, and recommendations are already a great help and support for Wuxian. Furthermore, it's now the free public period, so you can be the first to see the new chapters. It's also very convenient. If you have any questions, you can also communicate in the book review and comment section. Thank you, everyone. Happy Dragon Boat Festival. Chapter 11. What? That brat? Is valued by Elder Xiao? When Xiao Jihan hurried over to the sixth elder's place and heard the sixth elder's words, he immediately asked in shock. That's right, Jihan. It seems that we need to consider this matter carefully. We cannot act rashly for the time being. But, don't worry. With the support of your father's elixirs, you will definitely reach the peak of a 9th grade martial warrior within half a year. With your comprehension, you will be able to advance to a martial master in at most a year. Taking everything into account, it will only take you 2 years to advance to a 9th grade martial master. 6th Elder Xiao Bo said confidently, "What do you have to worry about? Although killing a genius in the cradle is a foolproof plan, no matter how talented that brat is, can he become a 9th grade martial master in 2 years? Furthermore, Elder Xiao only teaches literature and not martial arts. Otherwise, Ji Yan would only be a 3rd grade martial warrior since she was 7. 6th Elder Xiao Bo continued. That's true. However, I don't like that brat. Now that he is teaching with Ji Yan, it's hard for me to swallow this anger. Xiao Jihan said viciously, 6th Elder, although he has become Elder Zhao's disciple, Elder Xiao has never asked about martial arts. It shouldn't be a problem for us to use some tricks, right? It's fine. It's just that we can't expel him from the Xiao clan. Elder Xiao won't care if we let him suffer a little and obstruct his cultivation. Of course, we have to pay attention to the method. That's good. Xiao Jihan said with a sinister smile. In his eyes, 6th Elder Xiao Bo was just a greedy and lecherous fellow. Xiao Jihan naturally wouldn't mobilize so many people just for the red refined fruit and the Xiao clan's absolute art. However, he didn't tell 6th Elder the real reason. 6th Elder was afraid of Elder Xiao, but that didn't mean that Xiao Jihan would be afraid. As long as he did it secretly and cleanly, so what if Elder Xiao was powerful? Everyone who came into contact with Chen Hao had already been dealt with by him. Wouldn't it be easy to deal with him? The trees want to be still, but the wind won't stop. If Xiao Jihan had just given up, it wouldn't have been too tragic. However, he had to provoke someone he couldn't afford to provoke. A true genius, even in the cradle, was very scary. They were not people that any cat or dog could provoke. A divine dragon in the cradle that was destined to soar to the 9 heavens, was it something that could be shaken by a kitten or puppy? Chen Hao's experience when he was young made him much more mature than the average youth, but he was not a pushover. Yes, he remembered it clearly. Revenge, he remembered it even more deeply. Once he had the ability, it would be time for him to repay it. No one was spared. When Chen Hao and Xiao Jiyan came out of the Advanced Academy building, it just so happened that the school had ended. The bustling Xiao family disciples formed groups of 3 to 5, talking and laughing as they walked out. In the crowd, there was a pair of cute big eyes staring at the entrance of the elementary school, as if looking for someone. The owner of those adorable eyes is none other than Di Ling Yan. Knowing that Chen Hao is in the beginner class, Di Ling Yan rushed to the entrance as soon as class ended and waited for Chen Hao to appear. "Hello, junior sister." "Hello, junior sister." Respectful and flattering greetings sounded in Chen Hao's ears from time to time. Xiao Jiyan responded with a slight smile. She was only 13 years old, and the number on her slightly protruding left chest was 18. This kind of talent was indeed astonishing. Coupled with her identity and angelic face, there was no doubt that no matter where she went, she would be the most eye-catching scenery. When she passed by, the chaotic crowd would suddenly quiet down and automatically make a path for her. Xiao Jiyan was already accustomed to this and didn't care at all, just smiling and nodding her head to greet everyone. Chen Hao, who was walking beside her, felt everyone's burning gazes. Who is this guy? Why is he walking with junior sister Ji Yen? They seem to have come out of the advanced academy together. Number 99, isn't that the last in the Xiang generation? He's so handsome, standing next to senior sister Ji Yen. They're simply a golden couple. Bullshit. Senior brother Ji Han and Ji Yen are the golden couple. How can the last person in the Xiang generation be compared to Ji Yen? All kinds of discussions in the crowd clearly reached Chen Hao's ears. Most of them were jealous and sarcastic, and the occasional praise was slapped to death by others. Chen Hao's delicate face turned slightly red, as if he was not used to this kind of scene. Especially those fiery eyes that contained all kinds of emotions, almost drowning him. Dian. At this moment, a gentle and elegant voice suddenly sounded. A slender youth surrounded by a crowd of people, like stars surrounding the moon, appeared in front of Chen Hao and Xiao Ji Yen. His lips were thin and slightly curled, and although he had a smile on his face, there was a faint arrogance that kept people 1,000 miles away. Xiao Ji Yen seemed very happy to see this youth. She excitedly grabbed Chen Hao's hand and ran happily to the youth's side. Upon seeing this youth, Chen Hao was slightly taken aback. He had seen him during the test. Furthermore, the first person he had seen when he went down the mountain was this youth. At that time, this youth had also seemed to be rushing to the top of the mountain. An undetectable but abnormally cold gaze shot out from the youth's eyes the moment Xiao Ji Yen grabbed Chen Hao's hand. Senior brother Ji Han, hee, this is our junior brother. He's the little brother that I told you would definitely pass the test. He's now called Xiao Xianghao. He's in the Xiang generation and is ranked 99th. However, he should be first in the real test. He's a genius. However, because he didn't go to school, the sixth elder gave him the last place. The naive Xiao Jiyan did not notice the viciousness in Xiao Jihan's eyes. She turned to Chen Hao with a smile and said, "Junior brother, this is senior brother Xiao Jihan. He's the #1 expert of the Ji generation and a 7th grade martial artist. You must learn from senior brother Ji Han." Xiao Jiyan originally thought that the gentle, honest, and adorable junior brother would definitely admire him after hearing her introduction. She would then respectfully say to Xiao Jihan, "Greetings, senior brother Jihan." However, she did not expect that when Chen Hao heard the name Xiao Jihan, he, who was originally a little shy and uncomfortable due to everyone's gazes, suddenly raised his head. His clear eyes suddenly turned into 2 sharp swords that pierced straight towards Xiao Jihan, and intense hostility was emitted from his body. Xiao Jiyan and Xiao Jihan were both stunned. "Xianghao!" At this moment, a girl suddenly shouted. Chen Hao immediately retracted his gaze and turned to look into the distance. He immediately saw Pixie Ling, who had just squeezed out of the crowd. Chen Hao forced a smile at Pixie Ling, before suddenly turning to Xiao Jiyan and saying, "Senior sister, goodbye." After Chen Hao finished speaking, he coldly glanced at Xiao Jihan before running to Pixie Ling's side and quickly leaving with her. As the #1 genius of the Ji generation, when had Xiao Jihan ever been treated so coldly? Furthermore, it was in front of everyone? Which peer would not respectfully greet him as senior brother Jihan when they saw him? However, Chen Hao had actually directly disregarded him. Not only that, at that instant, Chen Hao's icy cold gaze that was as sharp as a sword caused him to feel as if he was being stared at by a venomous snake, and it actually caused his heart to tremble. Could it be that he knows that I'm suppressing him? Second update. Thank you to the friends who tipped me on the 21st of June. Fireworks by the riverside, passionate love .. Daniel's father, walking freely, startling images in dreams. Thank you. At the same time, thank you to the friends who received Wuxian's glory of the great god. Thank you very much. This is the greatest support for Wuxian. New book, please bookmark it and recommend it. I'm about to vomit blood. It's supposed to be released at 7 o'clock, but Chidian actually drew it. I was drinking with 2 brothers during the Dragon Boat Festival when I received a call from the vice president. I immediately rushed back. Sorry, brothers. This is really the reason why Chidian drew it. Chapter 12. Chen Hao's strong hostility surprised Xiao Jihan. Everything he had done to Chen Hao should not have been leaked. Why was Chen Hao so hostile? Anger burned in his heart, but he, who had always been gloomy, concealed it very well. That's strange. What's wrong with junior brother? Senior brother Jihan, don't take offense. He's a very nice person, Xiao Jian said in confusion. Could there be some misunderstanding between junior brother and senior brother Jihan? Of course not. Why would I lower myself to the level of a child? Xiao Jihan said with a smile. Let's go and eat. With a trace of doubt, Xiao Jian, Xiao Jihan, and the others walked towards the Xiao family's cafeteria. In the cafeteria, Chen Hao was once again treated unfairly. However, he still did not say a word. He silently rejected the good intentions of Lil Ling and the others. After eating some of the food in the lunchbox, he returned to the dormitory with Lil Ling and the others. Although Lil Ling had a lot of questions to ask Chen Hao, she could see that Chen Hao was acting strangely. Therefore, she could only suppress her curiosity. After Chen Hao returned to the dilapidated dormitory, he sat cross-legged on the bed. Every scene from the moment he entered the Xiao family's test until now surfaced in his mind. Every person he met and every word he heard clearly appeared in his mind as he searched for any information related to Xiao Jihan. After more than 10 minutes, Chen Hao suddenly opened his eyes. It must be because of senior sister Ji Yan. From the words of the disciple who had sent him to the dormitory, Chen Hao knew that he had offended Xiao Jihan. However, Chen Hao did not know how he had offended Xiao Jihan. This was the first time Chen Hao had met Xiao Jihan. When Xiao Jian had held his hand, he had felt a strong sense of hostility. Coupled with what Xiao Jian had said when she had introduced him to Xiao Jihan, Chen Hao had finally found the reason why he had offended Xiao Jihan. Xiao Jian. It was because Xiao Jian valued him and had a good impression of him. Although Xiao Jihan had concealed it very well, Chen Hao could feel a strong sense of hostility when he saw him. It was a kind of hostility that wanted to kill him. It was this kind of hostility that aroused Chen Hao's anger and bloodthirstiness deep in his bones. He had chosen to ignore Xiao Jihan's existence and go head-to-head with him. However, he knew that his current strength was not enough. It was far from enough. He had to become stronger as fast as possible. Thinking up to this point, Chen Hao no longer hesitated. He immediately abandoned all distracting thoughts, and the first level of the secret of longevity emerged in his mind. The Tao itself has no guiding force, it is only one nature. Life cannot be seen, it depends on the heavenly light. The Xiantian aperture is a supreme mystery. Light is easy to move but hard to fix. Nurture it with qi. Over time, the qi will condense and the deities will change. Everyone is focused on the Tao of immortality. The first level of the secret of longevity's mantra floated in Chen Hao's mind. Combined with Old Man Zhao's explanation, Chen Hao slowly merged with the essence of the secret of longevity and began his first cultivation. According to Old Man Zhao's explanation, the secret of longevity was difficult at first, then easy, and then difficult again. It advanced layer by layer, passing through each level of difficulty. The first level, which was the entry level, was the most difficult level. Ordinary people would not be able to enter at all. Only those with spiritual roots could enter. Even so, Old Man Xiao had repeatedly emphasized the difficulty of entering. However, what made Chen Hao feel strange was that he did not feel any discomfort of a beginner. On the contrary, he felt a sense of qi that should only be felt after cultivating for at least 3 months. A trace of extremely weak cool qi, like an ant, slowly rotated in his dantian. It felt very weak, like a dream, like an illusion. Chen Hao was not even sure if this feeling really existed. After an hour, Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes. Although the cultivation time was not long, Chen Hao felt much more energetic. With an excited mood, Chen Hao once again went to the profound library. Chen Hao walked out of the house in high spirits. Although he only ate a little for lunch at this time, he did not feel hungry at all. On the contrary, he felt that his whole body was filled with energy, especially his 4 limbs. They were warm, as if they had an inexhaustible energy. At this time, it just so happened that many Shao family disciples were rushing to the martial arts practice field to cultivate. They were in groups of 3 to 5, each of them walking slowly. Chen Hao did not want to attract attention, but for some reason, he could not suppress the desire to run in his heart. In addition, he did not want to waste time on the road. Therefore, just as he walked out of the dormitory area's gate, Chen Hao began to run wildly, running towards the profound library at an astonishing speed. Along the way, Chen Hao attracted the attention of many people. However, before the crowd could see clearly who it was, he had already run past them. Is this brat crazy? Rushing to be reincarnated. Seems to be a disciple of the Xiang generation. His speed is really fast. Who? Chen Hao rushed to the top floor of the advanced school in one breath and arrived in front of Elder Zhao's house. After a long breath, he tidied up his clothes and hair that was messed up by the wind. Running all the way made him feel much more comfortable. Xianghao? Come in. Just as Chen Hao was about to knock on the door, Elder Zhao's voice suddenly came from the house. Elder Xiao. After Chen Hao pushed the door open and entered, he gently closed the door. Elder Xiao was still sitting cross-legged on the praying mat. His appearance was no different from when Chen Hao left. It was as if he had not moved at all. Elder Xiao slowly opened his eyes and his gaze fell on Chen Hao. After looking carefully for a moment, he smiled and said, Chen Hao, looks like you have to quickly learn the boundless knowledge and start cultivating. Otherwise, the effect of the clear wind fruit will be wasted. I heard that you got first place during the test? Yes, Elder Xiao. Very good, very good. Elder Xiao took out the boundless knowledge book and said, let's begin. But Chen Hao's heart was excited. Elder Zhao's words seemed to want him to learn the boundless knowledge as soon as possible and then start cultivating. This was also what Chen Hao's heart desired the most. In less than 2 hours under Elder Zhao's stunned gaze, Chen Hao learned all the words in the boundless knowledge except for the immortal characters. Elder Xiao couldn't remember how many good words he said today, but he clearly knew that the young man in front of him would most likely bring him a pleasant surprise that would exceed his expectations. Looking at the young man in front of him who didn't have the slightest trace of self-satisfaction, Elder Xiao suddenly asked, Xianghao, tell me, why did you become a Xiao disciple? P.S. Thank you to Beauty Tian, Huyan Aobua, Abbess Miju, Free and Unrestrained Pride for your tips. Thank you. Our proud heaven has already been uploaded for a week. The recommendation votes are really few, only a pitiful 100 votes a day. Is this all we have? Please, the new book needs your support, urgently. Thank you. Chapter 13. Chen Hao was slightly surprised. He didn't know why Elder Xiao suddenly asked this question. However, this question didn't need to be considered for Chen Hao because his purpose was very simple. I want to be strong. Why do you want to be strong? For my family to live a good life. I don't want to be looked down upon or bullied by others. It's that simple? Is there anything else? To avenge my father. Chen Hao's eyes flashed with intense hatred. He clearly remembered the scene 5 years ago. At that time, he was only 5 years old. His family was originally in a small mountain village. Although the family was poor, they could barely survive. However, everything changed because of him. That day, he didn't tell his parents and secretly went to the nearest town to the village. Not long after entering the town, he met a few teenagers who were slightly older than him. Chen Hao's clothes showed that he wasn't a person from the town. The teenagers stopped him. These children from the town bullying the children from the village was one of their greatest joys. When an ordinary child faced a few children who were a few years older than him, he could only be bullied. Other than crying, there seemed to be nothing he could do. However, Chen Hao was different from other children. When the few youths punched and kicked Chen Hao, he did not cry. Instead, he mustered all the strength in his body and headbutt the fatty who was leading the bullying. The fatty's head hit the edge of the street with a bang, and his head was immediately broken and bleeding. Chen Hao also took the opportunity to rush out of the encirclement and ran back to his own village. When the children saw that their leader was beaten, how could they let it go? They immediately reported the news and chased after him. Two children who were a few years older than Chen Hao chased Chen Hao all the way to the edge of Chen Hao's village. However, they couldn't catch up. They only stopped when they saw Chen Hao enter his house. The tragedy was born because of this. That little fatty's father was a well-known bully in the small town. Relying on his wealth and power, he kept a group of thugs at home. They bullied men and women within a radius of dozens of miles, committing all kinds of crimes. When he received the news and saw that his son's head was bleeding, he was instantly enraged. He brought a group of thugs and chased them all the way to Chen Hao's village. After Chen Hao ran home panting, he was covered in mud. Under his parents' interrogation, he had just told them what had happened when he heard the sound of horse hooves and shouts. Looking up, he saw that the only mountain road that led to the village was covered in dust and horse hooves flying in the air. Chen Hai immediately knew that his son was in big trouble. Without saying anything, he hurriedly asked his wife to take the twins and Chen Hao, who were still in swaddling clothes, and rushed into the forest near the village. It was not until midnight when the villagers called for them that Mother Mei dared to bring Chen Hao and his siblings back home. The moment he entered the house, Chen Hao saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. Home was no longer home. Everything was smashed. It was a mess. Father Chen Hai's face was covered with blood, and he was lying in a pool of blood. Fortunately, a kind neighbor had already helped Chen Hai with a simple bandage. Mei, you should run away quickly. Those villains will come again tomorrow. With the help and persuasion of the villagers, the family fled the village overnight. Father Chen Hai was crippled for life. Well, then you must become strong. Only when you become strong can you let your family live a good life. Only when you become strong can you have the ability to avenge your father and never let your family be bullied. Elder Xiao suddenly said in an impassioned voice. The reason why he asked Chen Hao why he wanted to become a disciple of the Xiao family was that he wanted to understand where Chen Hao's motivation was. Once he knew this, he could use the reward for Chen Hao to stimulate Chen Hao to grow at the fastest speed. I will, Elder Xiao. I will become strong. Chen Hao said firmly. Very good. Chen Hao, from now on, I will reward you with 10 taels of gold for every rank you advance. If you are able to enter the top 100 in the Xiao family's outer court disciple competition half a year later, I will reward you with 100 taels of gold. Of course, this is only my personal reward for you. The Xiao family will also give you a generous reward. Elder Xiao said in a deep voice. 10 taels of gold? Chen Hao heard Elder Xiao's words and opened his mouth wide in shock. Their family's annual expenses were only a few taels of silver. 10 taels of gold was equivalent to 100 taels of silver, which was enough for them to live on for 10 years. Chen Hao already had a basic understanding of the martial artist ranks. Xiao Jihan had been in the Xiao family for 3 years and was already a 7th grade martial warrior. He had advanced by 25 grades, which was 2 grades and 7 grades. Although Xiao Jihan was the #1 genius of the Ji generation, since Chen Hao saw him as an enemy, he must surpass him as soon as possible. Only then would he have the qualifications to compete with Xiao Jihan. Elder Xiao knew that Chen Hao's aptitude was excellent. However, because Chen Hao cultivated the longevity secret art, his cultivation speed would not be too fast. For example, Xiao Jian had been following Elder Xiao since she was 7 years old and started cultivating the longevity secret art when she was 9 years old. Now that she was 13 years old, she had only advanced to a 3rd grade martial warrior after 4 years. The longevity secret art was like this. It was difficult to learn and was different from any other mental cultivation method. However, after asking Chen Hao about the situation and learning that Chen Hao had reached the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains in less than an hour, Elder Xiao was filled with anticipation. Xiao Jian definitely could not compare to such a physique. Perhaps it would exceed his expectations. As for the Xiao family's outer court disciple competition, Elder Xiao did not have high hopes and was only motivated. One must know that the Xiao family's outer court disciple test was only open to those below the age of 20. There were many people from the same generation who could participate. The competition was very intense. When Elder Xiao saw Chen Hao's expression, He was secretly happy. A child was still a child. Although this child was very smart, his experience determined his way of thinking. If he knew that in his future, money was really a small matter to him, how would he feel? If he was an ordinary martial artist, it would be fine. However, with his talent and aptitude, he was destined to embark on the path of a true expert. What Elder Xiao wanted to do was to help Chen Hao reach the 9th grade Martial King realm as soon as possible. Because only a youth with spiritual roots who had reached the Martial King realm would be able to break through to a higher realm. Work hard. You have already learned the boundless sea of learning. Tomorrow, you will officially start cultivating it like the other disciples. I will inform the 6th elder and the others. In the future, you only need to come to my place in the morning. Go. Elder Xiao said, remember, other than the longevity secret art, you are not allowed to cultivate any other mental cultivation method. Yes, Elder Xiao. Chen Hao clenched his fists and said excitedly. Chen Hao excitedly walked out of the profound library. Tomorrow, he would be able to start cultivating for real tomorrow. At this time, the elementary school was not over yet. The sound of reading could be heard from the classroom. Hearing the childish voice, Chen Hao could not help but think that if he had not met Elder Xiao, he would also be in one of the elementary school classes, studying with the other children. How could he start cultivating tomorrow? Only now did Chen Hao's gray mood, which had been suffering from unfair treatment since he entered the Xiao clan, finally turn for the better. He walked slowly, admiring the Xiao clan's magnificent buildings and beautiful scenery. From time to time, he would meet the Xiao clan servants who would look at him strangely. They did not understand why the other disciples of the Xiao clan were cultivating, but this youth was leisurely strolling around. Unknowingly, Chen Hao walked to the vicinity of the martial arts practice field. Loud shouts entered Chen Hao's ears. Hearing these voices, Chen Hao was a little excited. P.S. Today is the Dragon Boat Festival. I went to accompany my daughter and wife. I wish everyone a happy Dragon Boat Festival. Also, after reading this, please help me bookmark it. If you have a recommendation ticket, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Chapter 14. I'm going to start training tomorrow. Every time I level up, Elder Xiao will reward me with 10 taels of gold. 10 taels of gold, father, mother, brother, sister, they can eat well and wear good clothes, Thinking of this, Chen Hao couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lil Ling and the others have already been cultivating for a day. While they are still cultivating, I'll go take a look and see what they've learned today. Tomorrow, I'll be able to catch up. Chen Hao couldn't contain his excitement when he heard the sounds of martial arts from the martial arts field. Step by step, he walked towards the martial arts field. On the enormous martial arts practice field, there were no less than 200 people who were divided into different camps. Some were practicing their fists, some were brandishing their sabers and swords, and some were sparring with each other. Fist winds, sword lights, shouts, and the different colored origin energy fluctuations that symbolize the martial artist's rank caused Chen Hao's blood to surge. At a glance, Chen Hao saw the 3 classes of disciples of the Xiang generation. The 3 classes were standing in 3 square formations. Everyone was squatting motionlessly, and everyone was sweating profusely. 3 instructors were patrolling back and forth in the 3 square formations. As long as anyone's posture changed slightly, they would be mercilessly whipped by the instructors. Plop! A girl fell to the ground. Chen Hao was shocked. The girl who fell was the thin and small Lil Ling heir. Stand up! The instructor called Xiao Qinrui said coldly, today you must persevere for an hour. Now there are only 10 minutes left. If you don't want to fall behind, then give me your all. Xiao Xiangling, stand up. The black leather whip was like an animal being whipped, directly hitting Lil Ling heir's body. Lil Ling heir, who was already soaked in sweat, trembled all over. She gritted her teeth and stood up shakily without making a sound. Chen Hao didn't expect the Xiao family's training to be so cruel. Chen Hao could clearly see that each and every one of these youths were clenching their teeth, trying their best to persevere. Beads of sweat were pouring down like rain, and each and every one of them was trembling as if they could collapse at any moment. Except for a very small number of people, almost all of them had whip marks on their bodies, especially Di Ling Er. However, what made Xianxia feel strange was that in the entire martial arts practice field, apart from the 3 classes of the Xiang generation, the others did not seem to be arranged according to the Ji generation. Some were in the Shi generation, and some were in the Ji generation. Their ages were also different. Moreover, Xianxia did not see Xiao Jian, Xiao Jihan, and the others in the crowd. Xianxia did not know that the Xiao family had more than one martial arts practice field. This martial arts practice field was specially reserved for newly recruited disciples and disciples below the martial arts student rank. The disciples of the Xiao clan, from martial warrior to martial master, used a different training field. He could also find a place to cultivate and break through to the peak of 9th grade martial master, training hard for the sake of becoming an inner disciple of the Xiao clan. 10 minutes later, the 3 instructors of the Xiang generation announced the end of the training at the same time. Immediately, except for a few youths, everyone sat down on the ground. Don't forget to cultivate the tortoise breathing technique tonight. The 3 instructors said to their disciples one after another, then turned and left. Lying on the ground, Di Ling Er's entire body was sore, as if she did not have a trace of strength left. Only now did she finally understand why the Xiao clan disciples were so outstanding. They were simply treating people like livestock. During the morning training, all the Xiang generation disciples only learned a few basic martial arts moves. In the morning, they studied in the academy, which was relatively easy. In the afternoon, it was also very easy at the beginning. The instructors only taught them the inner strength cultivation method, tortoise breathing technique, which was not difficult to learn. However, the last 2 hours of the training was the most painful. If not for the fact that she was angry with her father, Di Ling Er did not know if she could have persevered. After a few minutes, some of the youths stood up one after another and slowly left the martial arts practice field. However, Di Ling Er still did not have a trace of strength left. Turning her head to look around, most of the people lying motionless on the ground were actually the last few sisters that Di Ling Er knew. The few of them looked at each other and suddenly laughed out loud. Women were indeed naturally weaker than men. However, with further training, this weakness would soon become insignificant. For a martial artist, the real deciding factor was Yuan Li. After a while, only Di Ling Er and the others were left in the martial arts practice field. Apart from Di Ling Er, everyone sat up and whispered to each other. Xianxia, who was hiding in a hidden corner at the edge of the martial arts practice field, walked towards Di Ling Er and the others. "Hey, Xianxia is here." A girl was the first to see Xianxia and was slightly surprised. After a day of interaction, they all knew about Xianxia's situation through Di Ling Er. However, they did not know that it was Xiao Jihan's conspiracy against Xianxia and thought that it was a special treatment for the last place. "Hello." Xianxia was in a good mood. With a smile on his face, after greeting the girls, he went straight to Di Ling Er, who was looking at him in surprise. "Di Ling Er, are you okay?" Xianxia asked with concern. "I'm fine. Why are you here?" "I've been here for a long time. I even saw you fall and get whipped by the instructor. Are you tired? Let me help you up," Xianxia said. "And I'm very tired. Not just tired, super tired." Di Ling Er saw the bright smile on Xianxia's face and seemed to be in a good mood. She immediately recovered her cleverness and sat up with the help of Xianxia. "You haven't answered me yet. Why are you here?" "Tomorrow, I can train with you guys. So, I came to take a look first," Xianxia said with a smile. The excitement in his eyes was obvious to everyone. He was not even 12 years old, but he was wearing the Xiao family's uniform and looked exceptionally handsome. Especially when he had a smile on his face, it made the girls stare at him a little. 12 or 13 years old boys and girls already had the concept of men and women. It was the age of first awakening of love. "Ah, really? Didn't you say?" The simple Xianxia had no schemes. His joy, anger, sorrow, and joy were all written on his face. He would say whatever was in his heart. When he told Di Ling and the girls about his day's experience, they were all happy for him. Of course, Chen Hao didn't mention a single word about the mysterious painting, breeze fruit, and longevity technique that Elder Xiao instructed him not to reveal. After resting for a while, Chen Hao and the girls returned to the dormitory. The girls took another set of clothes and toiletries and went to the public bath to take a bath. After a day of training, they were all sweaty. Their white clothes were almost black. For girls who love cleanliness, this was absolutely unbearable. Ever since he was young, Chen Hao had never known what a bathhouse looked like. It had always been something that could be solved with a basin of water and a towel. He had never planned to take a bath in a bathhouse. Moreover, he did not cultivate at all today, so his whole body was refreshed. However, under the girls' invitation, he still took his clothes and toiletries and followed them. He wanted to see what the public bath looked like first and familiarize himself with it. The Xiao family's public bath was specially built for the outer court disciples. It was located in the middle of the dormitory area of the Xiao family's outer court disciples. At this time, most of the disciples had just finished their training and it was the peak time for them to take a bath. However, the Xiao family's public bath was very big. It could accommodate hundreds of people at the same time. There was basically no need to worry about not having enough people. Chen Hao followed Di Ling and the girls to the entrance of the public bath. Xianghao, you don't have to wait for us after you're done. See you in the dormitory. We'll eat together. Di Ling said to Chen Hao as she and the girls walked to the smaller female bath on the right. After Chen Hao responded, he followed the boys who were talking and laughing to the boys' bathhouse on the left. Isn't that the poor boy? When Chen Hao entered the male bathhouse, 5 or 6 disciples of the Ji generation appeared behind him. One of them whispered to Chen Hao in a low voice. These 5 or 6 people were Xiao Jihan's lackeys who were with him in the afternoon. What a coincidence! I was wondering when I would find him to play with. I didn't expect to see him so soon. Today, in front of so many people, he actually dared to not give face to our boss. He's really courting death. Brothers, let's go. Another person said as he looked at Chen Hao's back. Chen Hao's figure slightly paused. Others couldn't hear it, but he heard it. His clear eyes flashed with a bright light. After a slight pause, he resolutely walked into the public bath. Afraid? Chen Hao never knew what fear was. Ever since he injured the bully's son and brought disaster to his family when he was young, Chen Hao had never fought with anyone. It wasn't that he was afraid of being beaten, but he was afraid of bringing harm to his family again. If he was bullied, if he was beaten, he could only silently endure it. However, he knew that his body was different from other children's because he wasn't afraid of being beaten. If the same stick hit him and Buttface would be in pain for a few days, but he wouldn't feel any discomfort after a short period of time. The same wound on other people might not heal in 10 days or half a month, but on him, it would heal in a few hours without leaving a trace. Now, he was already a disciple of the Xiao family. He didn't have to worry about his family being hurt. What was there to be afraid of? So what if their martial arts level was high? Kind people were bullied, and kind horses were ridden. Elder Xiao had said that without his consent, no one could expel him from the Xiao family. With this backing, what was there to be afraid of? After being treated unfairly time and time again, he could no longer suppress his anger. So what if he couldn't beat them? Since he couldn't avoid it, even if he had to bite them, he would bite off a piece of their flesh. Blindly resigning himself to adversity would only make them worse. Although Chen Hao was young, he could understand this logic. In the Xiao family, he didn't believe that they would dare to beat him to death. P.S. First update. Thank you to Harusian, Yisei LCC, Daniel's father, the Silent Scavenger, and Abbas Miju for their support. Thank you. Also, our recommendation tickets are really hurt. Brothers and sisters, can you give Wu Shan some encouragement? Chapter 15. After taking a numbered key from the servant guarding the door, Chen Hao slowly walked into the bathhouse. After entering the door, after turning around a screen, there was a changing room with rows of wardrobes. Chen Hao followed the number on the key and walked into the passage between the two rows of wardrobes. There were several teenagers in the passage, some were taking off their clothes, and some had already walked out with their buttocks naked. Looking at the naked teenagers, Chen Hao felt a little uncomfortable as it was his first time in a group bathhouse. However, these teenagers seemed to have no scruples and walked past him while talking and laughing. Chen Hao came to his own wardrobe. At this moment, the disciples of the Ji generation also walked in while talking and laughing loudly as if they didn't see Chen Hao. After coming to his side, they opened the wardrobe and took off their clothes. After a while, they took off their clothes one by one and walked out. From the beginning to the end, they didn't even look at Chen Hao. Chen Hao, who was already highly concentrated and ready for a fierce battle, felt a little strange. Didn't these people want to teach him a lesson? Why did they leave like this? Did they suddenly change their minds? Since they have all taken off their clothes, Chen Hao also took off his clothes and locked them in the wardrobe. However, he didn't take off his clothes, leaving only a pair of shorts, and followed them into the bathhouse. After passing through the changing room, a huge pool appeared in front of Chen Hao. There were dozens of pipes around the pool that were constantly pouring hot water into the pool. There were many teenagers lying on their backs on the edge of the pool, comfortably soaking in the hot water. The pool water exuded the smell of herbs. Around the big pool, there were small pools filled with clear water. Some teenagers were using basins to scoop water from the pool and pouring it on themselves. However, Chen Hao wasn't in the mood to appreciate this. His attention was focused on those guys. After watching them jump into the big pool one by one, Chen Hao, wearing shorts, found an empty spot on the edge of the big pool and jumped in. "Ah, little brother, is this your first time here?" At this moment, a rough-looking young man who was lying on his back next to Chen Hao saw that Chen Hao was wearing shorts and said with a smile. He only had his head exposed. "Okay." Chen Hao responded. "We're all men. We all have what we should have. What's there to be shy about? She would get used to it after coming here twice. Who would take a bath in shorts?" "Ha." The coarse young man laughed out loud. Chen Hao's handsome face immediately turned red. Indeed, he was the only one in the bathhouse who was wearing shorts. "If you want to learn from me, soak everything except your head in the water. This water has been added with dozens of precious herbs. As long as you soak in it for half an hour, no matter how tired you are from cultivating, you'll still be alive and kicking tomorrow," the coarse youth said enthusiastically. Chen Hao replied with a and followed the rough young man's example, soaking his whole body in the pool. The warm water immediately made Chen Hao feel very comfortable. "You're from the Xiang generation, right? What's your name?" the coarse youth asked. "My name is Xiao Xianghao," Chen Hao said softly. "My name is Xiao Jishan. Where are you from?" "Taiping Town." Chen Hao didn't feel the slightest bit of malice towards this warm-hearted boorish youth, but he wasn't in the mood to chat right now. He could only answer the boorish youth's questions intermittently, his attention still focused on the few fellows across the pool. Although they were far away and the bathhouse was in a mess, Chen Hao could still hear their conversation. "Second brother, it doesn't seem right for us to make a move here. We will definitely be punished by the head instructor. Why don't we do it secretly at night?" "Stupid! You've been with Brother Jihan for so long. Is your brain on your butt? You have to use your brain for everything. Use your brain, understand? Wouldn't it be too easy on him if we beat him up?" "What do you mean, second brother?" When he said this, the guy who was called second brother revealed a complacent and sinister smile. After he glanced at Chen Hao, he waved his hand at the others, and they immediately gathered their heads together. Chen Hao frowned slightly. Although his hearing was extraordinary, it was impossible for him to hear their whispers clearly at such a distance and in such a messy environment. However, from the conversation just now, he understood that this group of people did not seem to want to simply beat him up. "Ha ha, you will feel a little hot when you first enter, but you will soon feel comfortable." When Xiao Jishan saw Chen Hao frown, he thought that he was not used to the temperature of the water after jumping into the water all of a sudden. "Oh, thank you, senior brother Jishan," Chen Hao said softly as he secretly looked in the direction of those people. After a while, as the second brother whispered, The group of people revealed sinister and excited smiles as they looked in Chen Hao's direction with shining eyes. Chen Hao hurriedly looked away. He carefully observed their every move from the corner of his eyes. After a moment, two of the group of people walked out of the pool and secretly glanced at Chen Hao. When they found that he was not paying attention to them, they walked to the small pool at the edge and washed themselves with the basin. After a while, they secretly looked at Chen Hao again and quietly walked along the edge of the bathhouse to the changing room. From their sneaky appearance, Chen Hao knew that they must be doing something shameful to him. But he was here, why would they go to the changing room? There was nothing in the changing room except for his clothes. Could it be that they want to steal his clothes? Thinking of this, Chen Hao was suddenly shocked and hurriedly looked at his wrist. The key was still there and he was slightly relieved. If his clothes were stolen by them, it would be terrible. Without clothes to wear, he would not even be able to leave the bathhouse. But since the key was in his hand, they would not dare to pry open the closet. As long as the closet was pried open, they would be discovered. This was definitely theft. With regards to theft, Chen Hao was very clear. It was recorded in the new student information book. It was one of the rules of the Xiao family disciples. Thieves would be severely punished by the Xiao family and even be expelled from the Xiao family. Then what would they do? Chen Hao could not understand, but he was sure that the two people who went out were definitely going to deal with him. Chen Hao's brows furrowed once more as a strong sense of uneasiness appeared in his heart. A moment later, the two men swaggered back, glanced at Chen Hao intentionally or unintentionally, and then returned to the group of people with smiles on their faces. Second brother, it's done. When that kid is about to leave, we will go out in advance. Leave the task of beating him to me. I guarantee that I will beat him until he is a pighead that even his parents won't recognize. We won't receive any punishment. Second brother, you are really smart. One of the people who went back said excitedly. Under his excitement, his voice became louder and passed into Chen Hao's ears. After that guy finished speaking, the group of people gloatingly looked at Chen Hao, who seemed to be in the dark. Of all the people to offend, why did you have to offend our boss? Really fucking overestimating your capabilities. At this time, there were more and more people in the bathhouse. Some of the youths of the Xiang generation were walking around naked. Some jumped into the pool water, some washed with water at the edge of the pool. They were talking and laughing. People came and went and it was very lively. Just at this time, Chen Hao suddenly cried out and stuck his head out. He who was lying down suddenly accidentally fell into the pool. As if he was frightened, his hands actually splashed a large amount of water. After splashing a few times, he stood up. The pool water only reached his chest and he looked very embarrassed. Haha, Chen Hao's appearance immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. Little junior brother, what's wrong with you? The rough Xiao Jishan pulled Chen Hao to his side and asked. His voice seemed to be naturally loud and it was very loud. I suddenly have a stomachache. Chen Hao covered his stomach with both hands and said with a painful expression, Senior brother, where is the toilet? I can't hold it in anymore. Ah. Xiao Jishan laughed loudly. It's over there. Go quickly, you can't poop in the pool. After you poop, remember to wash your butt clean before coming back to soak. Ha! Xiao Jishan's words immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. Thank you, senior brother. Chen Hao was speechless for a while, but he knew that Xiao Jishan was just joking with him. He held his stomach and rushed out. When he came out of the pool, his unique and bright shorts immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. Those guys were watching Chen Hao, but they did not suspect him at all. As far as they were concerned, everything they did was done in secret. How could a little brat discover it? Moreover, they were not worried that Chen Hao would run away. Such bright and dazzling shorts, there was only one shop in the whole bathhouse. As long as they took a glance, they would find him. Hey little junior brother, where's your shorts? I know, you definitely couldn't hold it in and pooped. Hee hee, it's still not hairy, but it's not small. Junior brother, how old are you this year? A few minutes later, when Chen Hao returned to the big pool, Xiao Jishan glanced at Chen Hao's lower body and teased him. Chen Hao was embarrassed. He immediately covered his family jewels and slipped into the water. He said, "No, senior brother. Others don't wear it, but it's not good for me to wear it. So, I took it off. I'm 12 years old." Xiao Jishan had a good impression of this shy and delicate junior brother. His eyes were clear and pure, simple, and not scheming. More importantly, they contained a kind of intelligence and persistence. Xiao Jishan liked to befriend such people the most. He believed that no matter how such a person was now, he would definitely be an outstanding person in the future and would be valued by the Xiao family. Although Xiao Jishan looked old, he was actually only 15 years old. He had a boorish and bold personality. Among the outer disciples of the Xiao family, his cultivation was second only to Xiao Jihan, a 5th-grade martial warrior. He was willing to help others and liked to fight for justice. Moreover, he did not put on airs and would not bully others. Of course, no one dared to bully him because of his strength and identity. He was a direct descendant of the Xiao family and the son of the Xiao family's head, Xiao Ding's second brother, Xiao Gang. Otherwise, a genius like him would definitely become the target of Xiao Jihan's bullying. The direct descendant of the Xiao family was promoted to an inner disciple before the age of 20. The rewards they received did not conflict with those of the direct descendant. After all, even though the direct descendant of the Xiao family had to advance step by step from an outer disciple, they could practice cultivation techniques that ordinary disciples could only practice after advancing to an inner disciple. Therefore, Xiao Jishan, whose cultivation was the closest to Xiao Jihan's, could not affect Xiao Jihan at all. Moreover, Xiao Jihan was certain that he could advance to an inner disciple before Xiao Jishan. Second brother, Jishan seems to like that kid. He won't spoil our fun later, right? Why would he? If we were to trample on him like this, Jishan would definitely interfere. However, it's different now. We have sufficient reasons. Even if the head instructor comes, he won't say anything. It's fine as long as we don't beat him to death. He's a thief after all. Everyone has the right to punish him. A new week is about to begin. Tonight, Ao Tian will make his first attempt at the rankings. When the time comes, there will be a new chapter. I beg, plead, and beg all my brothers and sisters, no matter where you are, please come and support Wuxian. The public period is free. The results of the new book are very, very important. Please, see you at midnight. Chapter 16. Closing his eyes, Chen Hao smelled the faint scent of herbs and felt the surging heat of the pool. After seeing that those fellows were no longer paying attention to him, Chen Hao finally could no longer suppress the calmness he put on. His delicate and handsome face unknowingly carried a thick flame of rage. He had thought that after becoming a disciple of the Xiao family, his family would be able to live a peaceful and happy life and would never be bullied again. However, from the moment he entered the Xiao family, he had been subjected to Xiao Jihan's inexplicable suppression. What had he done wrong? Chen Hao could not understand. Could it be that Xiao Jian was so vicious just because of her good impression of him? Although Chen Hao was born in poverty and had experienced the joys and sorrows of the world at an early age, he was still only 12 years old and did not have any concept of the relationship between a man and a woman. Towards Xiao Jian, in his heart, she was just a beautiful girl who was like an angel and he had a hazy good impression of her, that was all. When he was young, the cruelty of the bullies had dealt a heavy blow to his family. This had caused Chen Hao's blood to be suppressed for many years. Over the years, he had developed the habit of tolerating everything. The other disciples had swords, but he did not, so he tolerated it. He should have been ranked first, but he was ranked last and had to live in the worst dormitory, so he tolerated it. He tolerated it when everyone else had started cultivating, but he was allowed to enter the academy alone, so he tolerated it. To Chen Hao, who was born in poverty and had suffered a lot, all of this was nothing. He could tolerate it all. That was because he was still a disciple of the Xiao family. As long as he was a disciple of the Xiao family, he believed that through his own hard work, there would be a day when he had enough strength. By then, all of this would disappear and he would have to repay what he owed. But now, Chen Hao was truly enraged. If not for his superhuman hearing, if not for his intelligence that far surpassed his peers, if not for his innate wit and attentiveness, then today might be his last day in the Xiao family. Even old man Xiao might not be able to protect him. He had worked so hard to bring a glimmer of hope to his family, but now it was going to be strangled in the cradle. He would once again return to his past poverty, back to his former worthless self. This had already exceeded Chen Hao's bottom line. Unknowingly, anger quietly rose on his face. His delicate and handsome face actually emitted a trace of coldness. He even couldn't control his breathing, which became deep and hurried. "What's wrong with you, little junior brother?" At this moment, Xiao Jishan noticed Chen Hao's abnormality. He frowned and stared at Chen Hao with a trace of concern. "I'm fine." Chen Hao, who was immersed in anger, was suddenly awakened. Seeing Xiao Jishan's concerned gaze, he hurriedly said in a low voice, "Tell me what's the matter?" Xiao Jishan raised his eyebrows and a crimson light that symbolized a 5th-grade martial warrior flashed in his eyes. He stared at Chen Hao and asked again. He could see the anger on Chen Hao's face. Even though Chen Hao tried his best to suppress it, how could he hide it from Xiao Jishan? Although Xiao Jishan looked rough and bold, he was actually a meticulous person. He was born and raised in the Xiao clan. Since he was young, he was educated and baptized by the Xiao clan. As someone who cultivated in both martial arts and literature, how could he be compared to an ordinary youth? Naturally, he was able to see through Chen Hao's lies. "Senior brother, I'm really fine," Chen Hao stubbornly said. Although Chen Hao had a good impression of Xiao Jishan, who was straightforward and did not look down on his senior brother, he did not think that he should implicate others because of his own problems. He also did not have the extravagant hope that Xiao Jishan would help him. His own problems should be dealt with by himself. His own problems should be dealt with by himself. "They bullied you?" Xiao Jishan suddenly glanced at Xiao Jihan's subordinates calmly. His gaze was sharp as he looked at Chen Hao and lowered his voice. Chen Hao was slightly surprised. "Senior brother, how did you know?" Hearing Chen Hao's words, Xiao Jishan's serious expression slowly revealed a trace of a smile. He said in a low voice, "I knew the moment you entered the bathhouse. Although you were by my side, your heart was elsewhere, wasn't it? Also, the way they looked at you, that was enough. What did they do to you? Tell senior brother." Chen Hao did not expect Xiao Jishan to be so powerful. Seeing Xiao Jishan's concern and sincerity, Chen Hao spoke of the despicable things that those people had done to him. Before Chen Hao finished speaking, Xiao Jishan's anger had already risen. He could not wait to beat up that group of scum. However, his expression did not change at all. He was still patient and listened to Chen Hao's words. From the beginning to the end, the two of them were chatting as they knew that those people were paying attention to them. Hearing Chen Hao's solution, the anger in Xiao Jishan's heart did not subside. However, the way he looked at Chen Hao changed slightly. A strange smile suddenly appeared on his lips. After looking at the number on the key on Chen Hao's wrist, he said softly, "Junior brother, you're very smart, but you're too kind. Don't say anything and don't move. Wait for senior brother to come back." "Senior brother, I'll deal with my own problems," Chen Hao hurriedly said. He did not want to implicate Xiao Jishan because he knew how powerful Xiao Jihan was. Not only was he the #1 genius of the Ji generation, but he was also able to use the 6th elder and some other people to suppress him. Therefore, he did not think that Xiao Jishan could defeat Xiao Jihan. Because of this, he had only said that those people were trying to frame him, and had not mentioned Xiao Jihan's suppression of him. "Don't worry, I'm not going to beat them up. Don't move. Don't talk." Xiao Jishan smiled and said softly. After he finished speaking, with a splash, he walked out of the pond. His well-built and strong body appeared even more imposing at that moment. Xiao Jishan's expression did not change as he walked towards the changing room. He Jishan left. "It'll be more convenient later," someone said from the group of people who were watching from afar. Just keep an eye on that kid." A few minutes later, Xiao Jishan returned to Chen Hao's side with a sneaky smile. He jumped into the pool again and suddenly extended his hand in front of Chen Hao. Junior brother, smell it. Smell it? Chen Hao was a little stunned and did not understand what was going on. Smell it to see if there's any smell. Damn it, I accidentally got it on my hand. I've washed it a few times already. Xiao Jishan said softly. Senior brother, there's no smell. What did you get on your hand? Hee hee, it's good that there's no smell. You'll know in a while. It's about time, we should go. You go first, I'll follow. Don't worry, with me here, those scum won't be able to hurt you. No, senior brother. Don't worry, they can't hurt me. I'm not afraid of being beaten, I want to beat them. Chen Hao suddenly said firmly. After saying that, he stood up from the pool and imitated Xiao Jishan's expression and tone. Don't worry about me, don't talk. After saying that, Chen Hao walked to the small pool and washed his face. Step by step, he walked towards the changing room. With every step he took, the anger in his body rose a little. The blood that had been suppressed for many years, hidden deep in his bone marrow, was burning little by little. Xiao Jishan was stunned as he looked at the skinny but determined figure. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the figure that hadn't even grown hair yet. Yes, it's aura. It's an aura that even I don't have. Good kid, you're really not simple. Brother's eyesight is really good. Xiao Jishan was stunned for a moment. His mouth revealed a trace of a smile as he thought to himself. After seeing those guys quickly follow him out, Xiao Jishan also quickly walked out. Good, you dare to steal our things? When Chen Hao just put on the wet shorts, a group of naked guys suddenly rushed into the narrow passage in the wardrobe room. They shouted and rushed towards Chen Hao. They didn't even look at their own wardrobe. There were also a few youths who were covering their noses and putting on their clothes. They were suddenly startled and looked at the newcomers. They panicked and hid to the side. At this moment, the entire passage and even the entire changing room was filled with a stench. The stench of feces. If they didn't know that this was the changing room, they would definitely think that they had walked into the toilet. The stench of feces was overwhelming. However, those guys who were anxious to teach Chen Hao a lesson didn't have the time to care about this. They only had one goal, and that was to beat Chen Hao up. Just as they rushed towards Chen Hao, a tall youth appeared behind them and blocked the passage. This youth was Xiao Jishan. However, he didn't make a move. Now wasn't the time for him to make a move. Firstly, it was because of Chen Hao's firm words that he couldn't make a move. Secondly, it was because he really wanted to see how this extraordinary youth would perform. Although he knew that Chen Hao was facing a group of scumbags who were much bigger and stronger than him, and the only outcome was to be beaten up, he still wanted to see. Of course, when it was time for him to make a move, he would naturally make a move without mercy. He had never shown mercy to scumbags. Chen Hao suddenly turned around without a trace of surprise. His originally delicate and handsome face was actually filled with coldness at this moment. His small and skinny figure, before those fellows had rushed to his side, not only did he not dodge, he let out a low and powerful roar and suddenly rushed out to meet them head-on. Chen Hao's actions were out of everyone's expectations. Those scumbags thought that Chen Hao would curl up into a ball and let them trample on him. Xiao Jishan thought that the smart Chen Hao would definitely hide in a corner and use the most advantageous position to fight with them. However, Chen Hao bent his back, head facing forward, and rushed out at an astonishing speed. This was the most commonly used kung fu by children who had no martial arts foundation, the Iron Head Kung Fu. Xiao Jishan was shocked. He was shocked by Chen Hao's self-destructive attack, and even more shocked by Chen Hao's speed. That speed wasn't something that a youth who had just started cultivating could have. Even if he wanted to stop him, it was too late. Pang! A loud crash, accompanied by a scream, resounded throughout the entire locker room. P.S. Thank you to Nan Mingzi XX, Chuan Liang Wuzi, drinking poison with a smile, harmless donkey, free and easy walk 5 brothers and sisters for their tips. Thank you. In the new week, Wu Shan's first attempt at the rankings. With 100,000 points of sincerity, I beg for all your support. Click, bookmark, recommend, review, tip. The results of my new book will depend on everyone, please. Chapter 17. Chen Hao's head actually hit the chest of the guy who was at the front of the group. He knocked him to the ground. The guy screamed as he curled up into a ball, his face pale. The guy who was rushing at the back was also blocked. Chen Hao did not stop. After knocking the guy down, he quickly ran to the end of the tunnel. He stared coldly at the guys without a trace of fear. Fuck? Motherfucker, he stole something and still beat people up? Beat him to death. Beat this scum to death. The group of scum did not expect Chen Hao to be so fierce. The person who was supposed to beat him up was beaten up instead. How could they tolerate this? Furthermore, Chen Hao was still a kid without any cultivation. They immediately clamored and wanted to rush up. However, before they could even take a step, Chen Hao once again let out a deep roar like an angry calf. With a shocking speed and a monstrous aura, he charged at them in the same manner. You're looking for death? Hi. The person in front shouted angrily. He lowered his waist and took a step forward. His fist shone with a faint red light and violently punched out. The faint red energy of a first-grade martial warrior poured into his fist. Junior, get out of the way. Xiao Jishan, who had not yet recovered from his shock, saw this scene and wanted to stop it. However, it was too late. Chen Hao's speed was too damn fast. It was so fast that even he felt inferior. He could only shout. His heart was filled with endless regret. He regretted that he had acted too late. Chen Hao's first attack could be said to have caught the guy off guard. That was why he was knocked over by Chen Hao. But now, no matter how hard Chen Hao's head was, could it be harder than the iron fist of a first-grade martial warrior? Using a hammer to hit the head was almost the same concept. Pung! Gotcha! The sound of a huge impact was still accompanied by a scream. However, this time there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. Chen Hao covered his head and quickly retreated without saying a word. As for the scum who had thrown out the powerful punch, he screamed and bent down. His left hand covered his right hand. His face was pale and cold sweat dripped down. My hand. Xiao Jishan abruptly stopped himself, and his eyeballs almost fell to the ground. No matter what, he would never have thought that Chen Hao, this seemingly weak and frail junior brother, would actually be so valiant. Could it be that his head was made of iron? Obviously not, because Chen Hao, who had retreated, was grimacing in pain, covered in cold sweat, and holding his head with both hands. However, he still did not make any sound of pain, and his eyes were still coldly staring at the group of scum. He was like a venomous wolf trapped in a cage, emitting a chilling aura. Although Xiao Jishan hadn't been able to stop Luo Yunyang, he had already rushed in front of everyone. His shout had reached everyone's ears. Other than being shocked and angry at Chen Hao, this group of scum did not dare to rush forward. Xiao Jishan coldly looked at the group of scum, walked in front of Chen Hao, and asked with concern, "Junior brother, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Chen Hao said. "Senior brother Jishan, this kid stole our things, he's a thief." One of the scum angrily said. They clearly felt that Xiao Jishan was protecting Chen Hao. They knew that if they attacked now, there would be no hope. "Thief? Stole your things?" The naked Xiao Jishan coldly turned around and coldly stared at the group of scum and coldly asked. "Yes, we saw with our own eyes that he stole our things in his cupboard. Not only did he steal our things, he also injured Ji Yuan and Ji Tao. Our Xiao family will never allow such scum to exist. Senior brother Jishan, you have to uphold justice for us. Is that so? You're sure he stole your things?" "We're sure," the group of scum said with unusual certainty. They personally stuffed their things into Chen Hao's cupboard, so of course they were sure. So what if Xiao Jishan had a good impression of this kid? A thief, especially one who just entered the Xiao family and exposed his vile nature, would be expelled from the Xiao family without any suspense. "Did you see? Just speak the truth." Xiao Jishan suddenly smiled and stared at the group of shocked youths hiding in the corner and asked. To be able to become a Xiao family disciple, of course, they were not fools. Although these youths were frightened by the scene just now, they could see that the tall youth who asked the question was protecting Chen Hao, and they could also see that the tall youth had an extraordinary status. Moreover, they were not Chen Hao who knew nothing about the Xiao family. Even if they had not seen Xiao Jishan, they had heard of him. What kind of person was he? Only Chen Hao did not know. Therefore, they knew what they should say, and what they said was the truth. No, we didn't see. The group of youths said in unison. What did you see? The smile on Xiao Jishan's face became wider. We saw them come in and hit him, saying that he stole something, and other than that we don't know. Very good. Xiao Jishan nodded with satisfaction, the smile on his face disappeared, and once again looked coldly at the group of scum, and said, Did you hear that? They didn't see anything. Senior brother Jishan, it doesn't matter if they saw or not, we just need to search this kid's cupboard. If you can't find anything? Xiao Jishan said coldly. If you can't find anything, then forget it, we'll treat it as if we've wronged him. You really know how to talk. Your words are even better than singing. Xiao Jishan said coldly, if you can't find anything, then you're framing him. Our Xiao family does not need scum like you. Of course, if we can find anything, then this junior brother will be expelled from the Xiao family. How about it? No problem. Senior brother Jishan. One of the scum said loudly. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by another scum. Shut up. The person who spoke was the one called second brother, Xiao Jicheng. Among Xiao Jihan's followers, he had the highest cultivation, and was also the one that Xiao Jihan appreciated the most. This was because he had Xiao Jihan's potential, which was ruthless, despicable, and shameless. It was just that he didn't hide it as deeply as Xiao Jihan. Second brother, I told you to shut up. Xiao Jicheng walked to the front and squeezed out a smile with an ugly expression, and said, Senior brother Jishan, Jun must have seen wrongly. This might be a misunderstanding. It's better not to search. Second brother. The guy just now didn't understand why second brother didn't allow them to search. They had clearly found everything, so what was there to be afraid of? Slap, I told you to shut up. Xiao Jicheng gave him a slap. He was a smart person, and he could see that Xiao Jishan was biased towards Chen Hao. He could also see the calmness in Xiao Jishan and Chen Hao's eyes. It was a calmness that indicated that victory was in their hands. Although he couldn't be sure that Xiao Jishan and Chen Hao had discovered their scheme, he also couldn't be sure that Chen Hao's cabinet definitely had something that belonged to them. It wasn't wise or necessary to take the risk of his brothers being expelled from the Xiao family to deal with Chen Hao alone. There were many ways to deal with Chen Hao, so there was no need to take a tumble here. Cowards, don't let me see you bullying my junior brother in the future. Scram. Xiao Jishan said coldly. He had always hated this bunch of people, but they were still disciples of the Xiao family and Xiao Jihan's accomplices. Therefore, even though he hated them, he couldn't really make a big deal out of it, because Xiao Jihan's position in the Xiao family wasn't as simple as being the number one genius of the Xiao family's Ji generation. Yes, we'll leave now. Xiao Jicheng hurriedly replied. I'll count to 3. If you don't disappear from my sight by then, don't blame me for being impolite. Xiao Jishan's eyes had a trace of a strange smile as he coldly said, 1, go. When Xiao Jishan counted to 1, although this bunch of scum was unwilling, they knew how powerful Xiao Jishan was, so they couldn't care less. The 2 guys on the ground were no exception. They quickly rushed to their own cabinets, opened them, and hurriedly put on their clothes before rushing out. When they opened their cabinets, Xiao Jishan, Chen Hao, and the crowd of onlookers immediately covered their noses. It was really fucking smelly. When they hurriedly put on their clothes and ran out, the sky-high stench had already filled the entire changing room. When the crowd saw the yellow sticky substance on those guys' snow-white pants and their buttocks, they instantly widened their eyes. They finally understood where the sky-high stench of feces came from, and all of them retched. Chen Hao also widened his eyes as he looked at Xiao Jishan, who had a strange smile on his face, speechless. Ha, little junior brother, is it fun? Xiao Jishan laughed and said, let's go, we'll talk outside. Fuck, it's too smelly. See you at the door. After Xiao Jishan finished speaking, he ran to his own cabinets naked. Chen Hao and the other youths also quickly put on their clothes and rushed out. When Chen Hao and Xiao Jishan met at the door, Xiao Jishan immediately saw the unusually eye-catching number 99 on Chen Hao's chest. Although Xiao Jishan didn't pay much attention to the Xiao family's new recruits, he knew that the Xiao family had recruited a total of 99 disciples this year. He obviously knew what this number 99 meant. This made Xiao Jishan's eyeballs almost fall to the ground. In his heart, Chen Hao's performance just now was at least in the top 3, and most likely in first place. It couldn't be the last 99, right? This made him very puzzled. Could it be that this year's new recruits were all super geniuses? Senior brother, did you do it? Chen Hao couldn't help but ask. Of course. Junior brother, you're too kind. These scum framed you, and you still returned their things to them. How could you do that? If people respect me, I'll respect them tenfold. If a dog bites me, I'll kick the dog. Kind people are bullied, kind horses are ridden. Strength is the absolute truth. This is your senior brother's motto. The tall and strong Xiao Jishan couldn't understand and could only put it aside for now. He was too embarrassed to ask Chen Hao directly. He immediately returned to normal and patted Chen Hao's shoulder vigorously. Chen Hao muttered in his heart, the one with the bigger fist is the absolute truth. Yes, strength is the absolute truth. If a dog bites me, I'll kick the dog? No, if I'm strong enough, I'll kick the dog to death. I'm very grateful for everyone's support. I actually made it to the weekly clicker ranking. Thank you everyone, and thank Feng Ling for sparing no effort in creating this single chapter. I've never thanked him face to face, so I can only express it here. The third update will be at around 7 p.m. Lastly, please recommend, click, bookmark. Dark Mountain will write to repay everyone. Thank you. Chapter 18. Little Junior Brother, have you ever cultivated before? Little Junior Brother, your speed is really fast, almost catching up with Senior Brother. Xiao Jishan said with a bit of cheekiness. That speed is not just catching up, this brother is not as fast as Chen Hao at all. Little Junior Brother, your head is really hard, just like Bruiser's. Even Senior Brother here might not be as hard as you. What do you mean, might not be? I'm 100% not as hard as him, okay? Chen Hao speechlessly said goodbye to Xiao Jishan and returned to the dormitory alone. After Pipsqueak and the others came back, they went to the cafeteria together. Xiang Hao, what's wrong with you? While eating, Pipsqueak and the girls noticed that Chen Hao's face showed a look of extreme pain. He didn't even bother to eat as he clutched his head with both hands. His eyes were full of confusion, as if full of confusion and a trace of fear from the bottom of his heart. I'm not feeling well, you guys eat slowly, I'll go back first. Chen Hao took advantage of his sobriety to finish the food as fast as he could and rushed out of the cafeteria under the surprised gaze of Pipsqueak and the others. At this moment, Chen Hao's heart was full of fear of the unknown. Perhaps because of the conflict just now, his head suffered a heavy blow that he couldn't bear. At this moment, although his head was only swollen and looked fine, after entering the cafeteria, he began to feel bursts of pain from time to time. This kind of pain was simply heart-wrenching, as if the depths of his soul were being crushed. Even the strong-willed Chen Hao couldn't maintain his calm at all. What caused Chen Hao to feel even more terrified was that, along with the waves of piercing pain, numerous unfamiliar scenes that didn't seem to belong to this world actually appeared in his mind, and they were even mixed with some information that Chen Hao was utterly unable to imagine or understand. What's going on? Did I hit my head just now? That's why I'm hallucinating? Moreover, the stabbing pain and images that seemed to come from the depths of his soul were happening more and more frequently, and more information was pouring into his mind. Chen Hao looked at Pipsqueak and the others in front of him and felt that they were all unreal. Chen Hao was very scared. He was sure that something was wrong with him, and it was very serious. However, the strange thing was, the seemingly absurd scene and information made Chen Hao feel that it was incomparably real. Bang! However, just as Chen Hao rushed out of the cafeteria's door, A figure suddenly crossed over. Before Chen Hao could react, they collided. "Fuck your mother? Are you blind?" At the same time, an angry roar was heard. "I'm sorry, I didn't." Chen Hao endured the piercing pain in his mind and said apologetically. However, before he could finish his words, a loud slap, without warning, landed heavily on Chen Hao's face. That crisp sound could be heard by everyone in the noisy cafeteria. Chen Hao fell to the ground with a bang. The slap was obviously infused with a strong yuan qi, causing scarlet blood to flow out from the corner of Chen Hao's mouth. Chen Hao's originally apologetic expression became abnormally cold at this moment. Especially when he saw the people around the other party, he emitted a monstrous anger. Gotcha! At this moment, Chen Hao's mind was once again filled with an even more violent pain. Suddenly, like a flash of lightning, the tide of memory fragments that accompanied it almost drowned Chen Hao. But at this time, he could only grit his teeth and slowly stand up. "Sorry? Just saying sorry is enough? Kneel down and apologize to me, and I can spare you." "Fuck your mother, you almost killed me," the person who came said arrogantly, domineering, and incomparably rude. Chen Hao didn't know this person, but the few guys standing beside him, Chen Hao recognized them. They were the scum from the bathhouse conflict. In a short time, the cafeteria entrance was surrounded by onlookers. When Di Lingyan and the others rushed out, they just happened to see Chen Hao slowly standing up with blood coming out of his nose and mouth. "Xiang Hao." Di Lingyan's petite figure suddenly rushed to Chen Hao's side. She had never seen such a scene before, especially when she saw the blood coming out of Chen Hao's nose and mouth. She was scared, but she didn't know where the courage came from, but she still rushed out and looked at the arrogant guy. "You? How can you hit people? Xiang Hao is not." "Hey, the little girl, who do you think you are?" "I, Xiao Jichuan, hit people, is that something you can control? Get lost. Otherwise, I'll beat you up too." Xiao Jichuan waved his hand at Di Lingyan and said arrogantly, "What's wrong, boy? You don't want to admit defeat? You can only blame yourself for bumping into me. It's not too late to kneel down and apologize, otherwise I can't control my fist." "This kid is unlucky. How did he bump into Xiao Jichuan?" "What bump? Didn't you see that Xiao Jichuan did it on purpose?" "This kid offended Xiao Jichang and the others. Ji Fei saw them in the bathhouse just now. Xiao Jichang and the others ran out of the cafeteria covered in feces. It said that senior brother Ji Shan helped this kid deal with them. This kid is also very fierce." "No way, right? Quickly tell us what's going on." Many people in the crowd whispered. Obviously, the conflict that happened in the bathhouse has already spread among the Xiao family disciples. It could be seen how fast this kind of news spread. Even if those guys wanted to suppress it, it was impossible. One had to know that Chen Hao, a disciple of the Xiang generation who had just entered the sect and had yet to officially start cultivating, had managed to injure two martial warriors of the Ji generation. This was already explosive news. Furthermore, Xiao Jihan's lackeys were all bastards of the Ji generation, so how could it not cause a stir? Especially, including the ruthless Xiao Jichang, who was forced out of the bathhouse by Xiao Jishan with feces and urine all over the place. This was simply a super joke that the Xiao clan's outer court disciples rarely encountered in a few years. The Xiao family had never restrained the outer court disciples from fighting. As long as no one was killed, it didn't matter. The enormous pressure brought about by the desire to excel was also one of the best ways to encourage cultivation. No clan or sect would forbid it. The strong were respected, and the winner was king. If you don't want to admit defeat, then you have to work hard to get back at them. Challenges, duels, as long as both sides were willing, they could do it at any time, even if it was a life and death battle. It was also because of this that such fights were very common in the Xiao family. However, it was very rare for a second-grade martial artist like Xiao Jichuan to bully a newcomer who had just entered the sect. How could an ordinary person have the nerve to do such a despicable thing? It was obvious that they were bullying others. It was also because of this that Xiao Jichang and the others would find an excuse to teach Chen Hao a lesson. Xiao Jichuan, who was a pervert in the Xiao family, was a fool that Xiao Ji-chang and the others used. Roar! When the sharp pain in his head finally disappeared, Chen Hao pushed away Di Ling air beside him, let out a beast-like roar, and suddenly rushed towards Xiao Ji-chuan. Be careful of this brat's head. Bang! By the time Xiao Ji-chang warned, it was already too late. Chen Hao was like a roaring beast, suddenly bouncing up. However, this time, Chen Hao did not use his head. After all, there was a big problem with his head at this moment, so how could he dare to use it? Although Chen Hao did not practice any martial arts and didn't even know the basic posture of a fist, the speed of his clenched fist was astonishing. His fist bombarded the arrogant Xiao Ji-chuan's face as he waited for Chen Hao to kneel and beg for mercy. Bang 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 bang. In an instant, 4 punches landed on Xiao Ji-chuan's face, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Fuck your mother! Xiao Ji-chuan's vision turned black and his head became dizzy. After a short moment, he finally sobered up and let out a furious roar. Gathering the origin energy in his body, he suddenly grabbed Chen Hao's neck in a faint red light. He, who was a head taller than Chen Hao, directly lifted Chen Hao up like he was lifting up a chick. His other hand mercilessly started to fiercely slap Chen Hao's face. Seeing that Chen Hao was about to receive the cruelest beating he had ever received in his life, the iron-like force around his neck made it hard for Chen Hao to breathe. No matter how Chen Hao struggled, he could not touch the other party's body. Let him go! Let him go! Di Lingyan screamed in horror. Listening to Di Lingyan's voice, looking at Xiao Ji-chuan's sinister eyes, the feeling of suffocation, the sharp pain on his face and the splashing blood from his nose and mouth. At this moment, Chen Hao suddenly felt that the whole world had stopped. The information that came with the sharp pain in his head, the information that he didn't have time to digest, suddenly appeared in his mind with incomparable clarity. Chen Hao's hands suddenly reached for his neck and pressed down on Xiao Ji-chuan's wrists. But when Xiao Ji-chuan's slap landed on his face again, Chen Hao's hands and neck suddenly pressed down with force. At the same time, his leg that was suspended in the air quickly kicked out. The tip of his foot was straight, and he used all the strength in his body. Bang! Almost at the same time as the slap, Chen Hao's foot heavily kicked between Xiao Ji-chuan's legs. A scream came out from Xiao Ji-chuan's mouth. At the same time, Xiao Ji-chuan suddenly let go of Chen Hao and bent down, both hands wanting to cover his crotch where the sharp pain came from. Unfortunately, bang! What everyone didn't expect and didn't have time to react was that Chen Hao, who landed on the ground, actually smoothly raised his hands high and suddenly pressed down on the bent Xiao Ji-chuan's head. At the same time, Chen Hao violently raised his knee. Xiao Ji-chuan's scream suddenly disappeared and directly curled up on the ground, falling unconscious. There were no more sounds, his face was covered in blood, and his nose turned into a pig's nose. Tell Xiao Ji-han, if he has the guts, then fight me fair and square. Everything he did to me, in the Xiao family's outer court disciple competition half a year later, I will make him pay for it all. Also, you dogs should have the awareness of your dog teeth being beaten into your stomach. If you don't accept it, then come at me, your end will be the same as his. Chen Hao's eyes were cold, and his voice was cold. After he finished speaking, he nodded to the dazed Di Lingyan and quickly left. Silence, it was strangely silent. No one would have thought that Chen Hao, a disciple of the Xiao clan who had just entered the Xiao clan, would have such astonishing battle prowess. Even Xiao Ji-chang and the others who had seen Chen Hao's speed and iron head technique did not expect this. Xiao Ji-chuan was clearly under the complete control of Xiao Ji-chuan, but he instantly turned the situation around. That tricky crotch kick and violent knee strike directly turned Xiao Ji-chuan, who was a second-grade martial warrior, into a pig's head. He was unconscious, and his family jewels were probably severely injured. Of course, the most important thing was Chen Hao's strange and ruthless kick, but what was even more shocking was Chen Hao's words before he left, words that directly targeted Xiao Ji-han. This sentence was like a bomb, causing everyone to feel dizzy and disoriented. Who was Xiao Ji-han? The #1 expert of the Ji generation, a 7th-grade martial warrior. Third update, a total of 10,000 words. Thank you very much for everyone's support. Brothers and sisters who still have a recommendation ticket, please vote for Dark Mountain. Thank you. Chen Hao is about to awaken. Brothers and sisters, with some more favorites, recommendations, and clicks, he is really about to awaken. Oh, intersection. Oh. Chapter 19. So ruthless. But this kid is obviously crazy. He actually dared to challenge Xiao Jihan. Oh my god. Isn't he courting death? So he offended Xiao Jihan. No wonder these guys are looking for trouble with him. This kid is so fierce. How is he so powerful? So what if he's fierce? He offended Xiao Jihan. I think he's done for. Chen Hao suppressed the shock and pain in his heart and returned to the dormitory as fast as he could. Challenge Xiao Jihan directly. Chen Hao was not stupid. He naturally knew how powerful Xiao Jihan was and that he had almost no chance of winning. However, he had no choice but to say that under such circumstances, only by doing so could he temporarily intimidate Xiao Jichang and the others. Otherwise, he believed that he would not be able to get rid of Xiao Jichang and the others. What he would have to face next would probably be a group beating. However, he did not have the time. The pain and changes in his mind made him unable to hold on for even a second. The frequency of the pain in his mind increased from once every 2 to 3 minutes to once every few seconds. From individual images to a series of memories, they surged into Chen Hao's mind at an increasing rate. Chen Hao did not know what was wrong with his head. This made him fearful, but it also made him excited. When he was fighting with Xiao Jichuan, it was because of these strange fragments of information that surged into his mind that he was able to unleash his crotch kick and violent knee strike. Chen Hao, who was completely relying on his willpower to maintain a trace of consciousness, finally could not hold on any longer after returning to the dormitory. He collapsed on his bed and hugged his head with both hands as he groaned in extreme pain. The heart-wrenching pain in the depths of his soul and the massive amount of information suddenly surged out like a river bursting through a dam. 12 years old. There were only a few days before Chen Hao turned 12. Chen Hao did not know at all that the pictures and information in his head were not illusions but real existences in another world. The microbe chip that carried the lifelong memories of Li Yuan, the mad scientist who pursued immortality, had already grown into Chen Hao's brain. Even without the accident, the microbe chip would have been activated on its own in a few days when Chen Hao turned 12 and started to merge the memories. But now, because Chen Hao had suffered a severe blow to his head, something that was supposed to happen a few days later had happened ahead of time. Earth, Wuxia, Li Yuan, who pursued immortality, ancient martial arts, cultivation, advanced technology, deep-sea naked corpses, cloned baby boys, memory chips, Li Yuan, the mad scientist who had set foot on the peak of Earth in many fields, had a magnificent and splendid life. Under Chen Hao's accident, the memories that should have been merged in chronological order had arrived without any pattern and occupied all of Chen Hao's mind. Nobody could have imagined that the experiment that had announced the death of the mad scientist Li Yuan on Earth would be restarted 12 years later on the boundless continent. The microbe chip that contained Li Yuan's lifelong memories. The reason why Li Yuan dared to make such a bold and crazy attempt and claimed that a second Li Yuan would be born on Earth and achieve true immortality was definitely not as simple as memory merging. Not only did the memory chip integrate all of Li Yuan's memories, it also created an artificial intelligence that was exactly the same as Li Yuan. At that time, the baby boy, which was Chen Hao, would have been in a state of deep sleep in the nutrient solution if the mysterious woman's body hadn't mutated when the memory chip was implanted. He would have been like a blank piece of paper and would have had no experience. 12 years later, when his brain cells matured, the intelligent brain would have woken up, the memory chip would have been activated, and the real fusion would have begun. The Chen Hao that was born from the fusion would have indeed become Li Yuan. This was because Chen Hao's perfect body would have been controlled by Li Yuan's intelligent brain, and the memories he possessed would have completely belonged to Li Yuan. However, because of the explosion caused by the mysterious woman's body, the baby boy Chen Hao arrived at another world, the boundless continent. Chen Hao grew up like an ordinary child for 12 years. He already had 12 years of experience and 12 years of memories. Moreover, the difficult living environment allowed Chen Hao to taste the joys and sorrows of life. He matured much earlier than ordinary teenagers, and his mind was unusually firm. It was no longer possible for him to be a blank piece of paper that could be splashed with ink. Because of that, when the memory chip was accidentally activated, the special soul made of Li Yuan's memories and the intelligent brain would have clashed violently with Chen Hao's independent soul. It was also because of that the fusion that shouldn't have caused any pain caused Chen Hao to sink into boundless agony. This was a battle between Chen Hao and Li Yuan. Two tigers couldn't live on the same mountain. One of them would inevitably be devoured by the other. If Chen Hao won, Chen Hao would still be Chen Hao. The only difference was that he would receive Li Yuan's magnificent memories, which would become his own inherent wealth of knowledge. If Li Yuan won, Chen Hao's soul would vanish into thin air. From then on, he would no longer be Chen Hao, but the madman Li Yuan on earth. Chen Hao's 12 years of experience would also become an insignificant memory for Li Yuan. Without a doubt, this was rather cruel for Chen Hao. It was equivalent to a soul that had been sleeping in his head for 12 years suddenly awakening and was now trying to take over his body. Who would win and who would lose? Ha! I've succeeded. Immortality. I, Li Yuan, have finally succeeded. Ha! When the intelligent brain was completely awakened and the memory chip was truly activated, the stabbing pain in the depths of Chen Hao's head no longer had any gaps. It was also at this moment that a voice filled with pleasant surprise suddenly laughed and said in Chen Hao's head. That voice was arrogant and unruly, filled with a sense of arrogance that looked down on the world. The intelligent brain was completely equivalent to Li Yuan's intelligent brain. In other words, Li Yuan had finally completely awakened. For you. At this moment, to Li Yuan's great surprise, a voice filled with anger and unwillingness actually rang out. For you. How could this be? The intelligent brain that had all of Li Yuan's memories could not react for a moment. After all, when it was implanted into Chen Hao's head, it had already entered a state of deep sleep. It was completely unaware of the changes that happened to the mysterious woman's body. His memories stopped at the time when the memory chip was condensed. It was impossible for him to know about the changes that happened later. In his mind, since he had awakened at this moment, the experiment had already followed the expected steps and was infinitely close to success. Right now, he did not need to do anything at all. He only needed to patiently wait for his memories to completely merge with the brain of this new body. Then Li Yuan would complete the last step. He, Li Yuan, would have the perfect genes and obtain true immortality. This step was the easiest of all the steps. It was like writing one's memories on a piece of white paper. There was no difficulty at all. But at this moment, why did another voice suddenly come out? While Li Yuan was talking, the stabbing pain in the depths of his soul broke out just like what had happened to Chen Hao. Just like Chen Hao, Li Yuan also began to obtain some memories that belonged to Chen Hao. Memories that did not belong to Earth at all. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can I have memories? How did I end up on this strange planet? Li Yuan, who was originally full of excitement, joy, and arrogance, understood his current situation from the memories he had obtained. Without a doubt, the body that he had cultivated was not sleeping in the nutrient solution. Instead, it had experienced 12 years of growth. What was even more astonishing was that it was not on Earth, but in a world that Li Yuan did not even know about. This alone was enough to shock Li Yuan, not to mention, Li Yuan knew better than anyone that this body had formed its own consciousness. In other words, it had an independent soul. What did this mean? It meant that the simplest and least risky step would become the most difficult and dangerous step. My name is Chen Hao. What do you want to do? Please leave my body. Chen Hao. Your body? I, Li Yuan, spent so much effort to create this body, and you say it's your body? Kid, do you know what you're saying? Let me tell you, I am you and you are me. You were created by me. Don't try to resist. You only have 12 years of consciousness. You can't stop me at all. I am the owner of this body. Nonsense. You monster, get out of my body. Chen Hao roared in horror. I, Li Yuan, have pursued immortality all my life. Can't I pass it just because of this little accident? Go to hell. Li Yuan said arrogantly, full of unwillingness. His life's work and pursuit could not be wasted no matter what. So what if he had formed an independent soul with his own consciousness? He did not believe that with his decades of memories, he could not swallow Chen Hao, who only had 12 years of memories. Boom, boom, boom. Along with Li Yuan's words, a terrifying rumbling sound that sounded like an avalanche began to erupt in Chen Hao's mind. Li Yuan urged the sea of memories to crazily suppress Chen Hao. The storm of the fusion of souls and memories was like a bomb exploding in Chen Hao's mind. No, to be precise, it was exploding in the minds of both of them. Whether it was Chen Hao or Li Yuan, they were both enduring unimaginable pain. That kind of pain was crushing their souls into pieces. If it were a normal person, they would rather die than endure such inhumane torture. However, Chen Hao and Li Yuan both endured it, because they both had their own obsessions. Death wasn't scary, but Chen Hao definitely couldn't die. Even though his soul felt like it was being torn apart, he clenched his teeth and endured the intense pain in his mind, as well as the invasion of the sea of information. He held on to his last bit of obsessions and kept himself awake. Just like the first time he fell into the illusion of calligraphy at Elder Zhao's place, he would not allow himself to fall into a coma no matter what. Because if he fell into a coma, it might mean that he would never be able to wake up again. He was already his parents' and siblings' only hope and spiritual support. At this moment, if anything happened to him, how could his family bear it? To become strong, to protect his family, to let them live a good life, to never be bullied by anyone. That was his determination, his obsessions. Now, he had successfully taken a step forward. How could he be destroyed by Li Yuan before his happiness was about to arrive? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.